tonight's episode, Triangle of Terror.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Okay, let's try this again. I'm trusting the intro went okay, but then I was not actually in here to say everything I've just been saying for a while. So thank you for your patience. Started a little bit late tonight. Is it Gary Gizzard's fault that we started late tonight? Or is it Budget Guns and Gear's fault that we started late tonight? Here's the thing. It's not my fault. So those two decided not to do their shows, and that disrupted everything. Very much like if an island is sitting there minding its business and two people jump off the island, is it the other person's fault that the island tips over? All right. So thanks for the feedback. Looks like we got some audio now. So this is the weekly 2A wrap-up, and we're doing a little bit differently tonight in that we have some links out there, not just to our Patreons, but also to some regular people. We'll see if they show up. And here's what we're looking at on the screen is my desktop, and this here that's wiggling is the text chat. So we're seeing the text chat because unlike scripted stuff that happens out there in the world, let's not do it this way. Unlike the scripted stuff that happens, produced videos and whatnot, we do it live. So now we'll be opening up the actual video that you're watching. Opening it up over here because the way we do our wrap up is we utilize the YouTube platform in more than one way. So we're going to be watching the comments. We encourage you to participate in the conversation. As I was saying, it's not a live, or I mean, it's not a produced scripted show. So you can be part of this whole thing as it goes on. But we're also going to be using the description part of the video. That's where we started taking notes, so to speak. That's where we have archived a whole bunch of stuff that was worth watching this week or worth paying attention to. We'll be going through it here during the show, and then it'll be here for you to check out in the future. So if you're listening to this live, you're part of the show, and these are the people over here that are live human beings that are watching this as we speak. And then for people that watch after the fact or listen after the fact, the description, which I'm scrolling through here, is all the stuff we'll be talking about. All right, so first off, I did, like I say, send out some links this week, so a little bit different than other weeks. And we got Budget in here. So what, you're out camping?
Yep, I'm laying in my hammock, minding my own business, getting blamed for you being late to your own show. That's okay, though.
Not that I'm late. It's like you jumped off of an island and everything capsized, and I'm just saying it's not my fault. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so you're out in the middle of nowhere, but somehow you quote unquote have good internet. So yeah, he's camping.
Well, I'm not necessarily in the middle of nowhere with this one. The friend who chose this campsite chose a state park campsite, and it's basically a trailer park alongside a lake because there's a bunch of campers and RVs and shit. And we're like the three guys in tents.
Right on. Like what, you got a hammock going? So you're just hanging out, or you're going to be sleeping in the hammock?
No, I sleep in a hammock if I can at all manage to do so, unless I'm reviewing a tent or not backpack, but sleeping pad or something like that. Given my personal preference, hammock all the way, man. Best sleep I ever had.
Right on. So right then, this is the weekly 2A wrap up, but we will definitely, look at this. I have it says weekly 2A update. What the hell does that mean? So we're going to go to edit video, and then we're going to change that to update. Actually, it's supposed to be weekly wrap up, isn't it? So we're going to change that to wrap up. Anyway, we'll get through the 2A stuff, and if you're still around, you're welcome to stick around as long as you want. If you're still around, we'll talk camping and stuff. I've never been, I shouldn't say that. I started out as a little kid being a tent camper, but I've always been interested in alternatives to tent camping. However, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I just never, maybe because I'm tall, I just never, and I'm a fat dude, never had alternatives to tent camping. Never even thought about really hammock camping, but I don't even know if it was a thing back in the day. But anyway, that's the kind of stuff you talk about on your show, Budget Guns and Gear, right? So that's the gear part of it. Otherwise, you guys talk about too once in a while.
I'm actually thinking about starting a Wednesday live stream specifically about camping and whatnot. You know, the whole Woodsman thing going along with the Woodsman Wednesday series of videos I started producing. I figured I might as well do a live stream with that, but I haven't quite committed to it yet. I need to get a couple more ducks in a row before I can make that an actual thing. But it's probably coming.
All right. Well, so I've been told that I am good at telling other people what they can do, right? Mansplaining. However, I know too many little kids that don't know nothing about what to do outside, have no experience, but not only that, have no older folks that have any experience or any interest in teaching them nothing. So
Yeah.
Anybody who's going to tell you like, oh, there's already enough of that or blah, 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 has not paid attention to the youngins out there that just don't have a chance to know. Like, let them see it at least and then go, I don't want to go camping, but to not even know camping exists is criminal.
Yeah.
So I definitely consider it. And, you know, obviously, I guess you have to make a living or whatever, but whenever you got time, I think it's worth the effort. Plus, you'll make more money than guns. Obviously, you make a ton of money doing that. So it's good. You all the online stuff is gonna facilitate that. It's gonna be happy with that because you're I don't know, however you decide to monetize it, it's gonna be not fighting uphill like it is when we do gun stuff. So anyway, yeah, I encourage you to put time into it. I don't know if I'm over talking you or what, but he is out camping. So all right, so we've got people watching live, and like I say, feel free to chat in here. So far, we got Woods out there, DJ, and Makojo. If anybody else shows up, we'll click their name up on the screen. If you feel special, if you want a super chat, then that means money leaves your pocket and it goes into my pocket. YouTube takes a cut, and I pay bills with it, and then I continue to do 2A projects. So I'll take that money, even with the YouTube cut. But we're going to start talking about stuff in this list. We're going to first mention it's Free Patch Friday. So we did get some orders from the store today. Do appreciate that. That's help. That's what, not just help, that's what keeps the bills paid. That's what keeps the servers running and that kind of thing. So thanks to the people that purchased stuff at the store. They will be getting some May the 4th stuff because I made a bunch of stuff for May the 4th and nobody bought nothing on May the 4th. So the people that ordered, I think 2 people ordered stuff today, they'll get the May the 4th stuff. And if anybody orders stuff, we appreciate it. Like I say, that keeps our bills getting paid. We don't just magically have money and I'm not retired or nothing with some kind of pension. So I do appreciate that. Now, that being said, the other half, well, not half, most of the way that bills get paid around here is with Patreon. And Patreon is what makes this show happen. So I consider this show to be for our Patreons. And with that in mind, thanks to our Patreons for making it another month of being able to keep the house and the van and the dog fed. That's everything that they make possible. Also, like I said, I had sewn up a bunch of stuff on our machines here in Tucson for for AKpril, right? I try to do an AKpril patch every year. And I think there was maybe 6 orders from the store all month, and I'm not even exaggerating. So didn't go through anywhere near as many of the patches as I thought I might. So all the extras will go out to Patreons. Normally, if everything was great, I would send that stuff out right away, but I'm cheap and poor. So I'm saving that till this month. And there's some May the 4th stuff I made up for sales and didn't get any sales. So I'll be sending out stuff to the what we call the pit crew, people that keep the van in the driveway, make it possible for me to go store and buy groceries and that kind of thing with the van. So we do appreciate that very much. And while it's not some kind of patch scheme where we got some kind of hookup going where every month we order dozens of patches and you get a cut of those, we do sew them here in Tucson on our machines, and we do them one at a time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to sew it out, and then some time to sew it into a patch and all that with our own fingers here. So we appreciate that. Our Patreons are what make it possible for us to do this. Now, you're not a criminal. You're not stealing this if you're listening to this and you're not a Patreon, because we don't care. Our Patreons allow us to do this so that we can push it up onto the internet for free. That being said, we're capitalists, and that's how we make our scratch. I don't know if that's clear to people, if they think I'm some kind of like rich retired guy or something, but I'm not. I'm super poor, and do appreciate the people that make it possible for us to put the effort into this and not do something shitty and lame for a living that wouldn't allow me to take my knowledge and awareness of 2A and try to keep it, sharing it with other people and keep hopefully some people motivated. You can't believe how many people I bother who would normally be stagnant, I think. So I do appreciate the ability to do that. I'm not the one to go, look who I pissed off this week. But if I did that, my Patreons should feel happy that I am out there encouraging people who should be doing a lot more to suck less, and to encourage those who are doing more. Of course, anybody can encourage people who are doing awesome to continue to do so, and can support them. You can support us, and you can support them the same way. Patreon's a great way. We're on Coffee, or whatever the hell that's called, so you can pay $3 at us, and that's like buying us a coffee. I do appreciate that. Makojo has done that in the past, and that literally just goes straight to our Patreon. So thanks for making. I mean, he's the only one that's ever done it. So I do appreciate that, to make sure the system even works. Anybody that wants to just throw a one-time $3 at us and hates Patreon because somebody told you Patreon sucks, we got the coffee going. We also have the Subscribe Star. The only reason I have Subscribe Star is so that I can support Locked and Loaded Latinos and Walt Anderson over there. So if you go to our what's it called? Subscribe Star, you can support us if you want, but that money's going to drop right back into Locked and Loaded Latinos, who does the best live 2A conversation each week on Sundays, and then Walt, who tries to do 2A, but gets all mopey about it sometimes, but he's still one of the best 2A dudes out there. And the only two people I support on Subscribe Star. But anyway, so that's enough of that. We'll dig into the week. So first off, we go into the Instagrams, and then we go into YouTube. Keep in mind, YouTube sucks pretty hard. The only thing good about YouTube is the community, the people that are over here. The platform is pretty handy, and we try to use it creatively, but it's not the best platform. Let's keep in mind that as we move forward in life and on this planet and around the stars and through the galaxy and whatnot, technology is going to change. YouTube is going to be a stepping stone towards something else, right? It's going to be a stair on a stairway to something greater. So let's not get too ingrained in this thing. But while it's useful for us, let's continue to use it. Instagram, same thing. It's not all that great, but it can offer some interesting stuff. That's only two I use anymore. I'm looking towards some new ones. And our Patreons will get that info first, just because I don't want to waste everybody's time. This is a 2A wrap-up. Are you kidding me? So now I have to log into Instagram for some reason. Stupid. So I'm going to try this again. I'm going to go to some of the links here from the... Are you kidding me? Why is it being a jerk to me? So we're going to try this again. Look at that. YouTube screwing with me. Oh yeah, look at that. I can't even link anymore.
I think maybe in here must have infected you with technical difficulties.
What happened? What did?
Said I think my presence must have infected you with technical difficulties, because this is the kind of crap that happens on my show.
This seems like some sort of a scam. So basically, we got the link here. It's got the S, so it's got the little SE thing going across, and then it's got the code or whatever to get it to the right one. It's stripping that for whatever reason. So open link in new tab, and you see it keeps going to this. I wonder why it's doing that. It is weird though. So I'm just going to go to edit, because if you just try to suck it right off of YouTube here, FYI, it keeps going to this. If I were to just try to grab it, most of these links that are too long are just going to get a ... So if I copied it from here and then copy and paste, you can see a lot of these are just going to be a ... So they're not going to work in the straight copy and paste. So keep that in mind when you're copying stuff off of YouTube. Since it's my video, I'm going to go to edit. Now I can go in here and highlight the whole dang thing. And let's see what happens if I use just this link right here and not going through YouTube. Am I still connected? Is this like am I not even on the internet anymore? Weird.
I mean, we're hearing you talk, so you have to be connected still.
Huh. What's up with Instagram? Instagram, does anybody, these works for anybody? If you go to you guys don't have to use your own phone, I'm sure, but people that are watching, if you went to the description of this video, do those links work, or are all these links dead? Weird. That makes it really difficult to do what I'm trying to do right now. Is it because they know that I'm trying to use another platform for their bullshit, or they're trying to mess with me? I'm going to scroll down. I'll just keep going. So we have a bunch of stuff from Instagram, which was worth looking at. And we'll see if anybody out there can see any of those links. Let's see. Spanky, you're not on a computer. You're out in the backyard on a phone.
That is correct. I am just on the phone.
So then let's go down to YouTube and see what happens if I click on this link. Well, it doesn't open a new window. That's annoying, but at least it opens the video.
That is correct. I am just on the phone.
So then let's go down to YouTube and see what happens if I click on this link. Well, it doesn't open. That was interesting. So that was it coming back. All right. So we'll just go down to the YouTube stuff and look at that, I guess. There he is. I do not know why it would do that to us. Anyway, you know what it might be too? Is because I got a hashtag in there? Yeah, I can't think of why it is. Anyway, we won't worry about it too much because sometimes these glitches are my browser and sometimes they're just YouTube messing with us. Let's see. So I had a link to Lighthouse for the Blind mainly because I wanted to just post to that channel. I found out, well, I've known about Lighthouse for the Blind for a long time, but I found out at SHOT Show the last year. SHOT Show happened in 2020 during their product preview thing, pop-up preview or something like that. The Lighthouse for the Blind was there, and they talked about, I knew that they had been making the canteens, I think, but I had no idea that they had made all the canteens, including the canteens that my uncle gave me. But that was pretty neat. And then, because they've made all the canteens basically. And then they made the shovels too. And I thought that was cool as hell because I'm not the biggest fan of that tri-folding shovel, but it certainly is decent when you get a real one. And to know that every single aspect of that shovel is made by people who have no vision, it's fucking awesome, I think. So Lighthouse for the Blind is on Instagram, and they only have 647 followers. One of the things I always put in here is the number of followers or subscribers or whatever they're called on the platform that we're looking at. And I think that's a shame. Lighthouse for the Blind is an awesome organization. They employ a shit ton of people. So, you know, you can wait for the government to do shit, or you can complain about how it just doesn't get done, or you can support the places that are not government that do awesome shit. And Lighthouse for the Blind, in my opinion, is one of them. Then you get a Girl and a Gun club, and see what happens if I try to open this in a new private window. Yeah, I'm going to try to go to YouTube, away from YouTube. Nope, it's definitely being weird to me. So no one is actually telling me if their links are working or not, but which one was this? This was a pretty good link to a Girl and a Gun. I think it was, which one it was? See, now it's driving me nuts. The DC project, though, that one was a video with Diana where she's at DC, I'm guessing during their last visit up there. And then it's like Biden kind of tripping over old plaid suit or whatever about who needs a 100-round magazine for hunting and blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't even get it out really well. But then it flips to her on the steps. You know, I think it's the steps of that statue that's like is it an Indian something? And he's like, I think he's looking towards the Washington Monument, actually. But anyway, I think she's at the steps of that. And then it kind of spins around, and then the Capitol's like over her shoulder as she says, you know, the Second Amendment isn't about hunting, it's about tyrannical government or whatever. And it's just the message, but, you know, it's her saying it with her DC Project shirt. and definitely done in a way that somebody had thought it out, like, what's the word, like had the direction, is that the way to say, like moving the camera and her dynamically so that it's effective and interesting to watch. Let's see, then you got the Naga channel over there, up to 35.8 thousand followers now. And they had a post about the number of new gun owners who were something, and then I had asked, see, I can't open the post or whatever, but I had asked if that was based on polling or based off of like talking, some sort of information from gun shops. So it's basically what we're going to experience, what I think we're experiencing, and what we're going to experience for a while, which is the gun community pounding our chests and being aware and welcoming and sort of what's the word, like, telling each other about how all these new gun owners are coming. And I just want to see some scrutiny on where we count these new gun owners, instead of just taking for granted a bunch of numbers for NSSF. I don't even say there's anything negative about it. I just think it's strategically smarter to get, to know who we're talking about, and not just assume it's a bunch of new gun owners that, oh, I thought they did the research. Oh, I thought they checked. So right now it's all NSSF, and that's all coming from 4473s. And until you can show me that, universal background checks don't affect 4473s, then, I still want to see some industry numbers. Then we got Guns for Everyone, Edgar up in Colorado Springs, who does the free CCW classes. He's been doing that for a long time. He has to constantly, well, not constantly, but occasionally, seems like quite often, well, every once in a while, he has to fight powers that be in some way or another to either recognize his free CCW classes or whatnot. But just saying the internet's not cooperating. Feel free to jump back in. I'm not giving you a lot of time to talk as I kind of whip through here, but as we start chatting later, we'll chat about hammocks and whatnot, because that is kind of interesting. If everybody's still awake, we'll see how many people show up for all this. It is a two-way weekly wrap-up, or after all. But anyway, I put a lot of stuff in here that ain't necessarily two-way. So the first one was a link to just a reminder about the YouTube show, and it'll actually be a link to the actual YouTube video down below. But I figured I'd post to the Guns for Everyone page as well. If this was working, this would be a link to the Guns for Everyone page, and they've got 8,000 followers. So I think he said one time 10-15% of the CCW cards, that permits that exist in Colorado, or was it 11%, come from his place, and those were free CCW classes. I just think that's cool. Plus, he's got interesting perspective on stuff. So, and then he's got the cool patch. It's that yellow patch with the wrestler holding an AK. So then he had another picture there with a dog. It was a little puppy and some other fat dog. So, of course, we requested a few belly rubs for them dogs. Then we got something called the Live and Let Live movement. Do you know who Mark? What's his name? All right, I guess I can't ask you. There's this attorney in Phoenix who's been around for a while. Do you know who I'm talking about, Smeggy? A gun attorney in Phoenix? His name is Mark. I talked to him. I don't know if he said yes or no. Anyway, so there's this attorney in Phoenix who's been around since the 90s, actually probably way before, but I've been aware of him since the 90s. And he's a advocate for firearms and freedom. And he's also in Hawaii. And I know he's been around for a while. I probably mentioned him a lot in the olden days of the Daily Gun Show. Daily Gun Show was a podcast that ran for 1,200 episodes since early, 2016, up until about a minute ago. So longest running firearms-focused gun podcast on the internet. And back in the old days, we used to talk about stuff, and I thought I'm sure we talked about the attorney before. This is a link to a project that he's got going called Live and Let Live Movement. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that before.
I have not heard of that, but it sounds cool. And the Daily Gun Show is definitely cool. So go back and watch the archive.
Yep, we left them all up for different reasons and trivia and quizzes and things. Plus the just good, wholesome fun and So Live and Let Live is kind of interesting, and this was a post that I thought was appropriate, and I put it in here. It might have been a little off topic, but um, I think it was an opportunity to focus. If this would open, it would have focused on. Uh-oh, we're getting a weird YouTube redirect this time. Nope, it's still doing weird. Maybe it's because I had so many links to Instagram. It's pulling some kind of spam glitch on me. It might be spam glitching me because there's so many links to Instagram on here. I'm sure YouTube hates this. Very spammy. So Live and Let Live, I guess it was sort of the idea that it was a positive post. There's quite a few positive channels I watch. And, if you spend all your time worrying about the negative and what doom and gloom and what could happen and the negative, what could happen, then you pretty much think about horrible negative crap all the time. And what's the point of living life? So this one is a little more of a positive spin. And I think that post had some sort of a positive message I thought would illustrate something to that effect. We got Utah Shooters, which is a place in Utah that has a thing called Shootah, right? If you take shoot and you take Utah, you smush them together, you get Shootah. And that's on June 19th. So they keep talking about it, trying to hype it up. So if you're able to go to Utah and you want to go hang out with people who like guns, people that have done all kinds of good pro-freedom, individual freedom type of stuff, they're a lot into prepping and long-range shooting quite a bit, competition shooting quite a bit, CCW shooting more than a lot of people, carry and concealed carry and stuff like that. Lots of gun culture in, well, at least Salt Lake City. Actually, everywhere I've been in Utah has a lot of gun culture. And I would guess you could technically say a lot of gun history as well. So if you're going to go to a place that's out of state or go to a destination, I guess, that's shooting related, like a giant gun show, basically, plus, a giant gun show on steroids, the evolution of a gun show, then you might want to check it out. I don't get paid to tell you to go to that, but I certainly enjoy what happens when our community flourishes. And this is the kind of thing that grows our community. It doesn't just suck up to one resource-rich, bloated entity in our industry and then suckles off of them. Instead, it brings together a whole bunch of people and gives them an opportunity to share and experience, use the First Amendment right to gather and free expression and art and all the rest. And what's the word? What's the other thing? Press, right? And then think about how many YouTubers are from Utah. So just a fun thing. I highly recommend it. Let's see. Then we got Page Gunsmithing School. I linked to them because sometimes people who hang out in this chat or around stuff that I host are gunsmiths, and they've gone to various gunsmithing schools. There's only 12 or 16 gunsmithing schools at all, period, that exist still. And this is in Pennsylvania. It's PA Gunsmith School, and they have a great page. I mean, some of the other gunsmith schools have pages, but they don't do anything on them. They don't know how to use Instagram, or they don't care. This is the opposite. They have a lot of fun. They show interesting stuff. Only 2,700 followers, so if you're looking for a fun, interesting page that's gun-related to follow and that's worthy, good stuff. Page Gunsmith or PA Gunsmith School. History and firearms. I think it's just some dude, 18,000 followers, somebody playing show and tell basically, but in a fun way. I don't think he's trying to sell anybody anything other than maybe trade in with collectors on some of his items. But he has like a lot of, back when P226 Nut had a bunch of guns and would take pictures of them and share them, that kind of page. So real artsy, kind of like Smeggy, you'll know who I'm talking about when I say Moon Food or Auto Loader, except with surplus guns, mil-surf guns. Next up, woolaroc. So that's a dude playing show and tell, pretty much like dozens of pictures only. And then you got woolaroc, which is some super rich dude from back in the day, owns a big chunk of Oklahoma. You can probably see the chunk of Oklahoma from space. And then he's got a museum there and a bunch of critters that are on a ranch, I guess, like on that piece of land. They put some fences up and they got all these crazy exotic creatures that they feed there. Got lakes and all kinds of fun stuff from back when he was a rich dude, and that was just his estate. And then when he left it to the state, I guess, it turned into sort of a museum and a place, a recreational park kind of thing. Pretty fun place, and they're channel is interesting. Of all the museums I follow, it's one that I still follow. There are museums that I'd like to follow, but I can't stand them, so I don't follow them. This is definitely not there. They're not perfect, right? They're not awesome all the time, but they have a lot of interesting stuff. A lot of stuff from Oklahoma. Turns out Oklahoma can be interesting. And then a bunch of stuff from the natives, the Indians, whatever's appropriate. And the cult collection. They never post the cult collection because they're jerks and they hate the cult collection, but they do have it there, and occasionally you can accidentally see it in the background of a picture once in a while. But otherwise, it's just interesting. There's so much variety of stuff at the woolaroc place that it's almost always decent, and they almost never bother you with garbage. Let's see. Then you got Pima. That was a funny one, I think. Pima's the museum here down in Arizona, Tucson, where they put a bunch of dead airplanes, and you can look at them. And I forgot which picture this was. There was a couple of things going on this week. How am I going to get this off of here onto a thing where it's just going to show me the damn picture? Why would it make me even log in the first place just to see a picture? That's what I don't get. I didn't know who I was. Got to have another app on here, another browser on here. Come on. Tell me I don't have another browser on here. Did I delete Opera? Ugh, gotta use Chrome. Ugh. Ugh. Ugh, it's making me log in. What, you can't look at pictures on Instagram without being logged in? Stupid Instagram. I don't like Instagram as much as I used to. So I don't remember what picture that was. Probably good or funny or something. Gun policy. Smickey's in here, and he might still be listening. 345,000 followers. At this point, we've got the NRA, we've got Second Amendment Foundation, we've got Gun Owners of America, then we've got Gun Policy Coalition. Firearms Policy Coalition, who on Instagram goes by Gun Policy, just to make it super confusing for everybody. So FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition, on Instagram, 345,000 followers. Am I crazy, or is FPC the only game in town at this point?
I certainly like them quite a bit. They seem to be the ones that are fighting the most. Like, they're definitely more lawsuit oriented and not as much lobbying, but I feel like that's an important prong in the attack. So I support them a million times.
All right, I'll agree with you that they're more lawsuit than lobby, but they're not. I would not agree with you that they're more lawsuit, period, because they do more than just lawsuits, where some of the others, let's see, any more? NRA was lobbying and education, and then community. And they still have community and well, they have all of it, I guess. But some of the others are just, I guess Gun Owners America is just lawsuits, and you would say Second Amendment Foundation is just lawsuits. Do we have, I don't know, Gun Owners America, I guess, does do lobbying, I guess, but nowhere near effective as the NRA. The NRA, I guess, is our other lobbyist. So I don't know who you're thinking is the lobbyist one. NRA, I guess.
Yeah, I would think of NRA definitely has the ears of more like senators and representatives. And like I said, I could be wrong. The stuff I see from
I agree with you. I was just wondering where you were coming from. Just I didn't want to assume what you were coming from. But I was just saying that even though I think you're right, I think that FPC also does education or awareness just in an amazing way. And then
they also have, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but they have an amazing grassroots thing. Like,
that's what you go to
when you hit action or whatever, and that it gives you all the stuff to write your appropriate people. You just type in where you are, and it finds like your representative, your senator, state level, federal, whatever it is. So
you're talking about the online resource of the website having the information and the ability to help you find and then use your contact, I guess, and then what to say when you contact your reps. That's awesome. I was thinking more of the the shows that they have that get the word out in plain English in multiple, like in 3 or 4 now different ways on a regular basis, 5 different ways on a regular basis, and they're good. Like, I mean, they're not all perfect, but none of them are lacking. They're the 5 out of the 10, you know, of the 10 things that are even happening. Every good one is from FPC, at least as far as like things on YouTube, messages getting out on Instagram. They're blowing everybody out of the water. But no, you're right. As far as wasn't even thinking of their website. They're literally have, well, they're blown everybody out of the water except for NRA has a massive, huge website that isn't as good, but it's just massive and huge and it's been around forever, so it wins. And then Gun Owners America does do well also, but I think Gun Owners America definitely puts a lot more like, I'm a member of Gun Owners America, and here's what I think, and then thank you for listening to our Gun Owners America stuff. You know, like they put Gun Owners America on top of everything, where I guess FPC also does, but not maybe 3 times in the same email.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I go to, you know, write somebody about something, I start at FPC, and they do have like the form letter where it says like, I know, Roy, I know. Sorry, my dog. Anyways, you know, it starts with like, I support, or as a member of FPC, blah, 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 I stand with, honestly, I always delete all that stuff. I like to use their letter as like a template, and then I add stuff in between. Some of the sentences are worded very, I don't know what you say, like they're just very good. So I'll keep those, but then I always write my own stuff because I don't like sending form letters. I like to send my own opinion, but they help me like bullet points of what I want to say.
Yep, and that's a good plan. So, yeah, FPC is Firearms Policy Coalition. They originally took their name in order to create confusion with Firearms Coalition, which is an organization that was founded a long, long time ago to at least facilitate the collaboration of the industry, but whatever, FPC decided to make their name Firearms Policy Coalition to either intentionally or unintentionally confuse things, and then to either again intentionally or unintentionally, thanks to whoever just bought something from the store. That little ding there, I don't know if it came up on the audio, was somebody buying something at the store, so thanks for that. But anyway, Gun Policy, FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition, who again either intentionally or unintentionally decided to call themselves Gun Policy on Instagram. Probably thought it was cool because it was short, but it isn't cool because it has nothing to do with FPC. There's not even an FP in it. I mean, there's the P in it, but no F and C in it. And you know what I'm saying? It's just super confusing. Anyway, so thanks to FPC for doing probably definitely the most work, probably some of the most effective work, I guess. That's more opinion. But I think as far as the most amount of work, you're talking, what do you say? That I think is count. You know, you can. What's the word I'm looking for? You could account for how much work they're doing. You can prove that. Like I say, if it's the most effective, I think you could debate that. Anyway, so that was a link to, I don't even know if it was something specifically in FPC because I'm being dorked with by stupid YouTube tonight on Instagram. Next, we get another page that, I don't know what this guy's doing. I'm assuming it's a dude. Let's just assume it's a chick. So I don't know what this chick is doing. It is basically pictures of old-fashioned magazine ads. They're all gun related, so it's really good. They're up to 11,000, just about to hit 12,000 followers. And they don't post very often, but there's nothing else. So it's just a fun thing somebody's doing, and they have the balls and the decency to not taint it. It's not like they've like, oh, here's free nachos. Oh, here's free nachos. Oh, sometimes we dip them in pickle juice. You know, like they're not doing anything weird. It's just plain old free nachos. So let's see, except that it's actually gun ads and not nachos. Let's see. So is that AK Lover? Is that why you're saying you're welcome? So I appreciate it very much. Let's look over here. And that's a big order. It is a big order. You'll get a whole bunch of free patches. So thanks for that. If you have any specific requests, feel free. I don't know if I'm not looking at it, so I don't know if you wrote something in the description, but if anybody does buy stuff at the store, there's a description there. Feel free to use it. We'll keep going. So RTGparts is a place that back in the olden days, I really wanted to do business with them. And to be honest, I may have done business with them, but I just don't remember. Like they may have sent me some stuff to do reviews of when I was doing show and tell, but it would have been pre-2014 and it wouldn't have been anything big. So I just don't remember. Shit, they might have sent me a knife one time. I just don't remember. But they've been a cool company I've been following for a while. And this is a post of a missile. And you know, you can see ordnance all the time, like bullets, no big deal. You can go to almost everywhere and get, you know, old, interesting bullets for a collection. Ordnance, bigger stuff than bullets, you know, bigger stuff like projectiles you can find a lot of times. The empty cases or something, or like demilitarized ordnance, you know, you can find quite often. Once in a while, you can find like an RPG or a bazooka or a law tube or something cool like that for a collection. This is a missile. This, I don't know what the hell this missile's for, but it looks like something out of like anime. It's this big fat squatty missile. It's like the big watermelon of missiles. I don't know what the hell it is. I think it's real though. And just a cool looking missile. I have no idea how much it costs, but I don't know. I know there's people out there that would buy that damn missile and have it in their living room or whatever because it looks so cool. Let's see. Ed had some interesting stuff. First off, wish these links worked. Where is the war happening right now? Belize or someplace like that? Someplace right now, their government is shooting the shit out of their people who are protesting, getting shot at, and they just got like, couldn't tell what it was, if they shot gasoline at them or if they were pouring something at them and it caught fire, but it looked like they were shooting flamethrowers at a crowd. It was pretty gross. So this is a couple of pictures that he's been using Instagram to post in different formats because they're using AI to take down all these pictures. And then the second link there was, I think those are the two links. The second one was a link to an interesting little device that this is 2021 and people aren't walking around, with sticks. They're walking around with little, computerized devices that do things also. So anyway, I just put those two links in there for people that are interested in, not just listening to the same old prepping spiel that people listen to for, the last 18 years and want to get up to whatever we're doing in 2021. Smeggy's taking off. Thanks for jumping in.
Yep, for having me. Have a good night, guys.
You bet. So next up is Ready Man Network, and if you haven't watched this channel, it's definitely worth watching. They've only got 77,000 followers, but I'm sure they're going to get much bigger. It's pretty much like the Boy Scout Handbook, or like, have you ever been to a hardware store or maybe a gun shop, and there's that little book next to the register as an impulse buy? And it's just like a little book of interesting facts and numbers and statistics and things, so you don't have to remember everything in the world. And that's sort of what this channel is, just all kinds of little handy stuff that takes you 5 seconds to watch, and then you just know a better way. Like basically the concept, if you've got a nail, a little finishing nail into something, if you take a comb and hold the nail with the comb and then nail it in, you're almost never going to smash your finger, right? It'll also allow you to put the nail exactly where you want it, and then smash it without even hurting the comb. So just little stuff like that, visually seeing that makes it just something that's in your toolbox. So it's a cool channel. I just wanted to post a couple of interesting things I saw over there. I think one of them was a map thing. Too many people don't know what a map and compass is because they grew up with GPS. And that's just, there's no need for that. You have to be able to describe to someone else where that deer is or where you saw that patch of strawberries or whatever it is. Let's see, then we got something from 2A Rally AZ, which is a channel for the 2A Rally that happens here in Arizona each year. And I don't know, I think I was going to post, depending on who was in here and if we could see the thing or not, riff a little bit about how that channel is doing as obviously an amateur 2A activist who is attempting to keep their a channel going, I guess, so that it's useful, and the 1 or 2 times a year that it's actually necessary to use it as the organizational hub for the event, I suspect. But, one of the themes that is going to happen tonight throughout some of the other stuff on YouTube and whatever is that, we live through cycles. I like somebody who mentioned the other day that we have pendulum swings, right? So the pendulum swings back and forth. So everybody acts like, oh, this has never happened before. Well, it has happened before, and it's something very similar will happen again. So, it'll change. It'll go somewhere else, and then it'll come back. Not every pendulum swings in a flat plane. Sometimes they move around. I don't know if you've ever seen or done any kind of observation of a pendulum. A lot of times in museums, big museums, they'll have like a giant pendulum with some sand underneath it, and you'll see the pattern of where that pendulum was going, and that can kind of show you how a pendulum will be very similar to repeating itself, but not necessarily exactly repeating itself. And when we think about it that way, there's a lot of stuff going on that isn't intentionally distracting or removing resources from the community, but because of the cyclical effect and the idea that new people are jumping onto the merry-go-round at any time, things are new to each person. So very few people stick around and watch things over time. With that perspective, we have a heck of a lot of potential. We've had a lot of work been done, and we're living at a really cool time. And unfortunately, instead of seeing everybody rally together and just push, there's just not a lot of drive. And that's just something that's awareness can affect that. So I just like to throw some of that out there. And I think what I was getting at is the two-way rally is a great example of a channel that's an amateur, someone who in their spare time is doing what they're able to affect positive change, and with the focus on Second Amendment and the rights protected by that Second Amendment. And I think it's a fucking shame in the United States in 2021 that we have to rely on amateurs. I find that it's great that individuals want to do it as a voluntary effort, but in a capitalist society with a community and industry and a community that's just raking in the money right now, it just sucks that we have to be hindered or hobbled by individuals who just don't have the resources to work on stuff full time, and that's frustrating. So anyway, I think that's something I'm going to continue to just make people aware of, so we can all realize that as capitalists we can change that. 38 Super Partisan is somebody like the history and firearms guy, or like Auto Loader we were talking about before. He's been mostly only post gun art, pictures that are interesting to look at. And this is another one. This one I think had some flowers in it, so I posted that one. 440 followers. So if you're interested in the channel with decent imagery and it's not every minute of every day, then that's a great channel to follow. We got Riding Shotgun with Charlie. I forget which one I posted to here. I do not remember. Nobody's really told me if the links are working for them, so we still don't know. Then we got the Fairygunmother. So this is a channel I follow that has 562 followers, just 300 lower than Charlie. And this is a link to a post that says something like Bubbles and Bullets. And it is some sort of an event for the ladies, I suspect, where they get together and they shoot guns, and then afterwards they drink champagne or something with bubbles in it, I'm guessing champagne. And it's at some sort of a range that has a bar, or has a cocktail area or whatever, something nearby that's adjacent or something, a snack bar that has champagne or something. So I was going to put that out there for discussion. I'm not saying it's bad or it's good, but I definitely can tell you that there are people that observe that for sure and probably get offended by it. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think they get offended by stuff like that. And where are we going in the world where, what I'm saying, like that is something that's going to divide, having a bunch of the ladies get together and shoot guns at a range and then drink champagne after. Now maybe it should have been called, what should it have been called? Like mimosas and 10 millimeter? I can't think of a M word from guns, but aside from not liking the name of it, bubbles and bullets or whatever it is, I don't know. Byron, what the hell posted he post? He posted something probably inspirational or encouraging. He pretty much only posts encouraging things or situational awareness, like looking at some footage of some horrible thing. I don't like watching those, so it was probably the uplifting, encouraging thing. So if that link is working for anybody. Oh, Makojo's saying it's working. Thanks. So yeah, I wonder why it's not working for me. Something's going on with my browser, I guess. So then we got Tatianawhitlock, and she has a couple interesting posts here. The one that I can remember is a post to a card, like a thank you card, basically, like a thank you for showing up and teaching us kind of a card, signed by a mess of ladies, whole bunches of them. So I just think that's inspirational and interesting because, again, there's lots of people. I suspect almost all the people you listen to on the YouTube who are dudes and don't pay attention to any of the chicks that are doing pretty much everything out there, don't pay attention to or aren't talking about, aren't focusing on just how many chicks are out there doing all kinds of interesting stuff. And they don't really wait around for dudes anymore. So pretty soon they'll figure it out and they won't be complaining about it. They'll just be figuring out that they've already been doing it. So anyway, I just figured I'd throw that one out there. And then what the heck was the other one? The other one was a link to something that was something else. An upcoming event, maybe? I can't remember. Then you get to this gun culture guy, Barbecue. You know who Gun Culture 2.0 is?
I think I've seen them once, but I haven't watched enough of them to know much.
All right, so that's some dude who I've been trying to get Walt to look at, because it's some kind of a liberal guy, and I don't know what he's trying to prove, honestly. I don't understand the liberals. At first, I thought they were like, hey, we're liberals and we're gun owners and we're not going to leave or whatever. And, but otherwise, here we are and like teach us stuff or we're so good. But now it's like, I don't know what they're doing. So I'm trying to learn and they don't really care about teaching. So I'm attempting to learn, but I'm not going to try real hard. I suspect they're going to be part of the future. Just don't know if they're going to like stick around and be part of the future or if they're just going to be a blip on the radar. I don't know what this guy's doing. I think this is a link to his book, but it might be a link to his one shirt. He's always posting a picture of his shirt. Like he wears this shirt that he sells around and he's like, I'm being 2A kind of, except in his way of saying it. And I don't know if he's trying to sell shirts, if that's like a cool hip way of selling shirts nowadays, or if like, hey, I think it says like guns are okay or something on it. It's just kind of a message. So I can't tell if that's his way of getting the word out or what. So I'm still learning. And that guy's got 1,000 followers. So that's where I think he's authentic. Because if he was at like somebody bigger, Byron, 61,000 followers, you can tell Byron's authentic because he's got 61,000 followers and he pretty much posts the exact same things over and over and over and over, right? So, and it's not some stupid recipe for Instagram. It's just the things he's interested in. This guy's posting the things he's interested in with 1,000 followers and he hasn't changed. So I know he's not trying to be an Instagram star. Professor at some school down south. Yeah. Wake Forest University. I know that's just like 9 to 5, but I think his deal, I think Gun Culture 2.0 is a book or a project and books come out of the project, or that was his first book and now he's writing a second book. I'm not really sure. He's sort of like always like, I'm still writing my book or I'm editing my book. And when people say shit like that, I don't know if it means, because I don't watch their shit that intently. I don't know if it means like this is my first book ever or like this is my third book or like I missed something and this is the 5th book. So I know he's always talking about writing a book though. And then he also has these shirts. So then we get to Reverend Ken Blanchard. Ken's a cool dude. He retired from guns a couple of years ago, but he still sticks around. He's also an OG. He was, CIA or something, and Marines, and then CIA, I think, back in the olden days. And then started being a 2A activist, a gun content creator in the 90s, or even the 80s, I guess. 90s, he was an author. So he was one of the first adopters of the internet, and then not just the adopters of the internet, but using the internet to talk about guns and stuff. He was one of the people that literally inspired me to do any of this stuff. He's a cool dude. And damn, I can't remember what this post says, but it says something like believe in yourself or something like that. It's like some sort of uplifting thing. He's also a reverend, and I can't keep up. He's got more than one channel. He sort of divided up his interests into different channels. The one I follow is his old gun channel. So just he sometimes post something kind of gun-ish related, but he'll also talk about his guitars and his motorcycle and the various projects he's doing, singing, and now some suicide. Not so much awareness, but like, I don't want to call it, I don't know what we would call it. I best just, I don't want to call it counseling, somewhere between counseling and like a weekly hangout type. It's a podcast that focuses on suicide and not just prevention. I don't know what to call it. Check it out and you'll see what I'm talking about. Respect yourself. Appreciate it. Thank you. That's what this post says. And then I'm going to leave it with the Instagram section with dude Liv is flipping me out. So here's the deal. I unsubbed the dude on Instagram. It's not something I like to do, so I figured I'd put it out there in case we had a conversation or anything going on tonight. But yeah, dude basically reposted a petty little blah, blah, blah thing. And the problem is, I really don't care usually when somebody's like reposting a petty little blah, blah, blah thing. But the dude literally just posted the other day, like, if you're going to be petty and blah, 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 then, you know, then take off. I'm like, well, I think he's asking me to take off. So anyway, mainly because the person that was, I don't know, I just don't get it. So, yeah, some once in a while, you have to intentionally let somebody's feed disappear from your feed, right? Let's see. Then we had Every Second Matters this week. Now we're getting into YouTube videos. You know, this guy right here, he posted a video, and there's a link to it right there. Go back over here. And then we had the Every Second Matters chat. I think it was quite a few hours this time. I had quite a few different people show up. It was fairly interesting. You might want to watch it or not.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Or just do something on the second of every month. That's what it's all about. Awareness of what the Second Amendment protects on the second day of every month. And part of the fun or part of the interesting thing about it is that it's been around since 2013. And since there are no rules, it's been interesting to see how it develops. Let's see. So the best thing that happens every week for Second Amendment and is live is Locked and Loaded Latinos. I say it that way because there's other interesting things that happen, and sometimes they're good. But consistently every week for the last 42 weeks, Locked and Loaded Latinos has been posting their show on Sundays, and it's freaking awesome. It's literally the best thing to watch all week. If you can only watch one thing, that's what I'd recommend watching. It is not garbage. It's not regurgitated. I've been watching stuff for a long time, and this is one of the only unique things that doesn't go back and listen to the same old every time. So I don't know where they listen to. I think it's the lack of listening. Most of y'all are listening on stuff off the internet, and because you haven't been around a while, you don't realize that what seems interesting or funny or something to you has been like said like 14,000 times. So you're just, you know, on this cycle, and they're not. Like, they are definitely getting their sources, their stuff from different places. They just care about different things. And maybe it is their lack of just being embedded online all the time. You know, because I think they've actually mentioned that a little bit. Anyway, I think they're coming at it with not just a fresh perspective, but useful and, as far as I can tell, the best thing that's happening every week. So their show is this week about the 3D printing and the court taking on that and Nick spying on us and whatnot. To be honest, I don't remember everything about the show. So were you watching This Week Barbecue?
No, I ended up missing it, unfortunately. I really wanted to catch it, but I still haven't even gotten to go back and replay and watch it.
Well, you're allowed to stick around, but I can't remember it. Let's see. Then we had your show. You do a show on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you did one about firearms in the schools. That's the one I linked to. On live shows, especially long ones, I don't go back and listen to them either. So if they're long and I miss them, then you might as well, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to listen to a 4-hour chat if I ain't there listening to it. So let's see. Then we get South Carolina. So here's what's going on. Clover is taking care of Texas by watching everything that happens, doing all kinds of work and stuff. And Night Strike's like, let me in on that gravy train. Like, I want to know what I can do to be just like Clover. So basically, he made it so that South Carolina's debating on open carry, and they went on for like, I don't know, 10 hours or 8 hours, something less than Clover, but similar to Clover. And yeah, I watched a good chunk of that while I was doing other things. I would not want to hang out with almost anyone in the South Carolina Senate. I'm just saying it, right? I just said it. Not funnest thing to watch. Then you got Texas, who's over there trying to pass constitutional carry, and I think last week already talked about Clover working off of it and wasting 10 hours of everybody's time watching. Turns out 197 people went up and offered testimony to the Texas State Senate on constitutional carry. And although Clover refuses to tell us the exact percentage, we think a pretty heavy percentage of them were pro-constitutional carry. So it was super interesting to watch. And this week, it wasn't as interesting, but it was interesting. It was still interesting, but nowhere near as interesting, I guess is the way to say it. This week, it was the senators complaining at each other and whining at each other and whatever about every old garbage BS argument that's ever come up about gun control, or I guess about any kind of concealed carry or anything. So definitely Texas has a good senator in whatever that guy's name is. He's some kind of orthopedic surgeon, whatever that is. Is that bones? Is that your bladder? I don't know what orthopedic surgeon is. But he's smart and he's good on his feet. The thing is, they gave him a lot of punches, but it was the same old punches everyone's ever given anybody on any kind of concealed carry. There was hardly anything about actual constitutional carry specifically. So the guy didn't have to be a genius. He just had to have endurance, and he probably is a genius, and he had the endurance. So it was interesting to watch. I'm not going to say it's worth watching. If you're going to spend a lot of hours watching something, watch the testimonials. Clover's video with the testimonials are the ones we're about to talk about next. Those are inspirational. Those are worth listening to, and those will give you a resource. Those will give you stuff you can point at, literally things you can point at on YouTube, but things you can refer to that are solid points for, in this case, constitutional carry, but in a lot of ways, almost all two-way arguments. You know, some of these are useful, especially when you can cite, like, I know a teacher in Texas who was, defending constitutional carry, and she brought up blah, 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 and therefore your argument sucks, loser. And, we win every argument, and then all of a sudden we have all the best gun laws. So I'm not saying Clover did that yet, because we have to do the work of solving every argument with Clover's resources, but he certainly set us up, some sort of a weird Texas freedom volleyball situation where he set us up with this couple of giant live videos. And then whenever he's bored, I guess, he takes his giant 10-hour video and chops it up into 9 chunks. First, he copies off of Rachel Malone and just forks all of her good information and puts it in its own separate video. I don't know if Gun Owners America even did this. They probably didn't bother. And then he has one here for doctors. So that's all these doctors. For 197 people testified to the Texas State Senate on constitutional carry. Clover went through and pulled all the doctors and put them into this video for people to use as a resource. Did the same for the law enforcement who spoke, for the personal stories during that testimonial period, the whole 10-hour period. Different veterans, and then the instructors on focused, those testimonials that were focused on restoration of our rights, and some were focused on paying for those rights, and then to, I guess, to address the concern that it would be the Wild Wild West. I guess there's a whole video, I haven't watched this one, on just people addressing the concern that it would be the Wild Wild West. So again, there's lots of interesting stuff that's been happening in Clover, again, using YouTube in an interesting way, destroying his channel. So luckily he got a bunch of super chats. He is monetized over there. He has a Patreon. He's got stuff in his store, so you can buy loot and stuff off of him. Yeah, it's great to see people using the resources in different ways. He's attracted a bunch of people to the situation. Now, is that because he got in collusion with like every millionaire in Texas who made their money off of guns, and Clover asked them all to not talk about this so that he could be the only one talking about it? No, because all the other ones are just too much lazy and they don't want to ruin their channel by talking about that stuff. So Clover's at least able to pull in a little bit of gravy. Unfortunately, it won't mean money. It'll just be awareness, but certainly cool to watch somebody with intent, Clover, and then with the resources, a channel, the ability, right? He knows how to do stuff, and he was willing to pay the $25 for the month of the duck, which is the Canadian thing we're using over here, that lets me do this every once in a while.
Tonight's episode, photo finish.
Clover had to pay $25 to be able to do that. Yeah, it's interesting to watch that dude use the platform and the tech in a way that, like say, he set himself up. He was able to do it, and now people are joining in and using it there at the event. And now after the fact, because they met up at the event, who knows what kind of collaborations are taking place. No one knew you could do that before. So, Gunners or America, we've already talked about, they're kind of on the ball. They're watching what's going on. So they're seeing Clover Tech do it. They might copy him next time or add it to their inventory of stuff. We know that some of the other organizations pretty much only copy what other people do. So they're definitely watching Clover and figuring out how they can do it cheaper. And again, with his blueprint. So that was all pretty cool. Then we get this guy, Devin. So Devin Gritter is another dude. Or no, wait, this is Clover talking to a dude who talked at the thing. And he went live. Clover went live on Monday, which he does. And went live on, wait, this is Clover talking. Went live on Monday and then had that dude in who was one of the people who spoke at the event. And then after that is when you get to Not So Slim Jim, who has a channel on YouTube with 5,000 subs, and he posted a live streaming of the constitutional carry in Texas thing, kind of quirking Clover. I don't think they know each other, so it wasn't with any animosity. It was just a coincidence. But the thing is, I found him because it showed up in my feed for whatever reason, and I noticed it because Clover's weird picture the other day of a guy with kilt on with a single action. I was looking to see if it was in my list over there. It's not. Anyway, that's the dude. Not So Slim Jim is the dude who is in Clover's picture. So isn't it weird that the guy took a picture, that Clover decided to use it, and then that guy is also streaming? So you act like Texas is so big, but a lot of people would say it's a small world. So anyway, that's that dude, 5,000 subs. How many does Clover have? Clover has 7,000 subs. So should we have him arm wrestle or sub wrestle or some sort of a fight? I don't know. Just saying. Next, we have the Ghost Gun update. Crump. A lot of people hate John Crump, but he's always out there doing stuff, posting info and whatnot. He's got 2,000 subs on this channel, and he talked about this Ghost Gun situation, which I believe was just like updates to a story that broke last week. We were live on Every Second Matters, and during Every Second Matters, we also went live. So that's double living it. We've done it. We'll do it again. We've triple lived. I'm pretty sure we've had up to 5 iterations of live happening at once because we do stuff like that. Well, we double lived, and we also double lived with a reason, with intent. And we did it to 1,000 Riding Shotgun with Charlie. It turns out his Facebook group, who he pleaded with, he had literally said, "Can you please sub to my channel? I need like 9 subs." His Facebook group was like, no. So they gave him like 3 subs. So we went live, and during our live conversation, boom, we 1,000'd him. It's sort of like Highlander, which is a movie a lot of kids haven't seen before, but it's an amazing movie, except that instead of chopping each other's heads off, we give each other 1,000 subscribers and give them the power of monetization. So instead of like chopping a head off of a Highlander and then stealing their energies or whatever happens, you thousand another channel, and your energies flow into them. So it was pretty fun. We got to do that live. A lot of people experienced it. It was sort of like a backwards Highlandering effect. Let's see. So next we get to Riding Shotgun with Charlie, who's the same guy we just referenced. After 1,000 him, he continued to use YouTube, and he posted a video number 103 where he interviewed the guy who created the New Jersey Second Amendment Society, the NJS 2AS. So NJSAS, NJSAS. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. I think I've heard the conversation before, but not in Charlie's format. I think I had heard the guy on a different interview, and it was a little different. So learn a little bit more about that organization and that dude. Got a link here to Dragonman's. I guess I could be opening every of these because now I'm not being hindered. That's what it's like this time around at Dragonman's. 90 people showed up that day. 2 weirdos and 90 people. So you had that drop into 2 different groups of 45. He explains it here in this 3-minute video. Dragonman's awesome. Amazing museum. Gets bigger all the time. 90 people in that tour this week. Then you got that podcast with Edgar and some other guy. So here's the thing. Do you know who this other guy is? Does anybody know who this guy is? Barbecue. Here's another one in here. So I guess he's not answering. I don't know who this guy is. I think I know who he is, but I'm not totally sure. Anyway, they had a chat. It's all right. Let's see. Who was your favorite person that came up to speak? I like the guy that mentioned Whataburger. We're talking about in Texas during the 197 testimonials. You know, it's tough because there was a lot of testimonials to listen to, and we were having some fun after a while, and I wasn't, you know, I was at home, so I was doing other things and not paying 100% attention, but I can't even remember of the ones I listened to if there was any that stood out. There was a whole bunch that were good, and then a whole bunch of those I suppose were the best, but I don't know. I would probably say the guy who showed up in Clover's chat and then eventually said something on my channel so I could, you know who the dude was. And then if the guy ever gets with Clover to be on his show, I think that'll be the one. Just because it's neat to see it all come full circle, and for to know that that Clover's show was useful for people that were there. Let's see. Then we got this one, the FFL Elite course. I can't figure out if that's a scam or not. So if anybody feels like it, check that out. Let me know if you think it's legit or if it's a scam. Because basically, here's the deal. You can't just go get an FFL because you feel like it. Like, oh, I don't feel like paying for guns. I'm going to get an FFL and just hang out, not paying full price for guns. For some reason, the ATF gets all mad about that. So if you go around saying, oh, you're sick of paying full price for guns? Just get an FFL. It's no big deal. Like, that's a scam. Like, I would not be wanting to promote something like that. However, 8 million new gun owners, blah, blah, blah. They're not 8 million new, like, yahoos that already go to the same gun shop. They're the yahoos that are coming up here and getting all worried about bubbles and bullets or whatever. A bunch of old ladies, a bunch of ladies getting together and drinking champagne after they go shooting, right? So if you're going to get all upset because you go into a place and they got a flag, or you go into a place and they don't cater to your business or whatnot, then you better start making your own FFLs. So if that's the case, right on. Like, I want to see all kinds of new FFLs, even liberal FFLs. Yeah, I want to see that even. But I don't know about this one, if it's legit or not. If it's legit, I want to promote them. If it ain't, not promote them. Let's see. Then we got constitutional carry and the 2A Overton's window. You heard that? Constitutional carry and the 2A's Overton window. So that's Town Hall Media. That's that one dude that looks just like Gary Gizzard, but isn't Gary Gizzard. And then 268,000 subscribers. Here's what I don't get. How can this dude have 286,000 subscribers and they don't understand how useful YouTube can be? So that's a whole thing in itself. I don't care anymore, so I'm not going to look into it. That part drives me nuts. Anyway, I haven't watched this whole video, but I probably should because the title sounds interesting. I guess barbecue sleeping by now, just because he had his barbecue show earlier and he probably was ate a bunch of barbecue. He's all logy.
Yeah, that hickory barbecue just really settles heavy.
So anyway, I'm interested in that one. Did you watch Walt in this interview with the queer armorer?
I caught part of it.
Everybody said it's so good, so I haven't even watched any. It's so good.
From what I caught, I enjoyed it.
Now, Walt started the whole thing off like he was selling something, so I'm gonna have to go watch it eventually, I guess. See if it is so good. If it ain't so good, I'm not gonna be happy about it because I don't like going back and watching stuff. I don't, unless it's something amazing, then I don't like to go backwards on the internet. Let's see. Then we got the J.M. Davis Museum posted by Roll Call. He may or may not be out here tonight. And yeah, talk about a dude who went with Budget, who isn't in here anymore. But those two dudes, Budget joined in here earlier, if I can find this thing. Those two dudes went to Tulsa in a car, which is a road trip going to a gun event right away. That's more 2A than like pretty much anybody else you're watching on YouTube. If you get in an airplane that's paid for by like, let's just say a giant middleman in the industry, right? Like a giant middleman who makes all their money just buying stuff, especially old stuff that's going out of stock, and then selling it to people, right? And then making a bunch of overhead so that they can afford to send, somebody who's trying to emulate a TV show or some kind of Hollywood celebrity. And then you pay that Hollywood celebrity wannabe on an airplane to go somewhere, and they go there and they take a bunch of Instagrams of their food or their coffee or whatever other sponsors they have or their t-shirts that they're wearing while they're living the life in their hotel room or whatever. That ain't the same as somebody who gets in a car and drives somewhere on the cheap, right? And then has to go to the hotel. Like they're too frilly. That's why he couldn't sleep on the ground, right? He's got to sleep in a hammock because he's scared of bugs. But it was interesting, right? It's real life. We're watching them dudes do their real life thing. So again, you could go do that and just keep your business. Well, I went on a road trip with my friend and we had our stories and we'll know about it and screw the rest of you. Or you could share that with everybody, right? And that's what these guys are doing. Anyway, Road Call, in addition to all of that, is posting stuff for the J.M. Davis Museum. So a lot of people go to a destination over and over and over again, take for granted that the coolest collection of guns is there and that our community thrives when it thrives and not just, festers. So the fact that Roll Call is paying attention to the museum, can't give him enough credit. I think that's awesome. He also does a show called Rants and Raves with sometimes Night Strike. And, they pretty much rant and rave about stuff. But throwing stuff up about the museum, that's super cool. That's like, there's a jar at the museum and a lot of people go in there and just do their thing and then leave because you can, because that's how cool the museum is. It's free. A lot of people will go in there and see that jar and they'll be like, oh, here's $1 or here's $5 or here's $10. And then there's people like me, I'll put $20 in there because it's not my money and that's as much as I can afford. But doing this, right, making a video about the place, it's like dropping a 50, not even being a dick about it, just like dropping a 50 and saying thank you to the lady and leaving. So that's the equivalent right there. That guy's got class. Because nobody else has to do it and very few people did it. So that right there tells you he's one of a kind. Let's see. Let's also not forget that SpaceX is winging stuff like humans and stuff into space, and it's coming back down, and it's landing. Stuff's catching on fire, and it's still landing anyway. So again, anybody that's going to tell you about 2A and can only tell you about the moping and the blooming isn't paying attention to what else is happening in the world. And we've got a pretty cool time in the world to be watching stuff happen. Got some super chats coming in. Thank you very much for that. Gun Library Garrett, who is super chatting us right now, has also super chatted some of the best people on YouTube. I don't know if you super chat the losers because I don't watch the losers, but I do watch some of the best people on YouTube. And I noticed that Gun Library Garrett has supported those people with super chats. So I do appreciate that. Thank you for not just supporting us with $10 tonight. I don't know if you realize that's $5 and that's $5. So thank you for that. But I do appreciate that you're supporting others in the community that are attempting to do their thing as well. Let's see. He says, if the ATF keeps messing with people, I think the public might get annoyed and defund them. Yeah, I think in the big picture, I agree that we're going to see some changes sooner than later, especially the way that they're kind of picking at the scab constantly. I guess we'll go back. There's not that many comments. We'll see if any other comments have come in this evening. What time is it? We've been going for an hour or something. Barbecue, you got anything else since we've been jumping through here?
Not that comes to mind offhand. There was a Walt's interview with the Queer Armor. The part that I caught of that, the guy was talking about his journey into firearms, and I thought that part was pretty interesting. But that's all I really caught of it as well. So.
Right. So earlier when Budget jumped in, he was saying about how he's in a hammock and he's sleeping in a hammock. So Kojo had said something like no EDC flashlight. So he might have been just. I've been in places where you want to turn on a light, just would annoy everybody around you who doesn't want a light go off, especially if you're in a crowded campsite. I personally hate those. The last time I slept in a crowded campsite, like a public campground that was crowded, was probably with Haas, and it was like when we had no choice on our tour in 2012. But that's one of the reasons I got other options, because I don't ever want to have to do that again. But you might as well be in a hotel with no walls, right? You're in a crowded campground with other people. I don't know what. I don't understand who that is appealing to. People in campers probably don't care because they don't hear each other. But if you're in a bunch of tents and they're, right next to everybody, that's not enjoyable. You hear everything everybody's saying. It's just noisy and uncomfortable. I don't like that. But so I could totally see if he was in a crowded place, which it sounded like he was, that you wouldn't want to just turn on a flashlight. You'd be super annoying to everybody who's trying to do other stuff and enjoy their evening, right, out in the woods. Which probably didn't lend himself to listening to a phone and having to talk to a phone. Unless he's got the earbuds, in which case, I don't know, it's probably less bothersome to other people. He's coming up as skull. Oh, you know what that is? Probably the skull. Duh. Boom. It is. Oh, I can't click on it over there. But it is. It is the cow skull icons. Oh, look who showed up. So you're allowed to stay up this late? Oh no, this is only 10 o'clock for you. Your normal time zone. We're just whooping through the comments, which there's not very many of them. We can get to topics or whatever. Thanks for jumping in. So let's see, we got Erstwhile. Appreciate the comment. It's been a while. Thanks for jumping in. We've got AK Lover, who it sounds like bought something, so you'll be grabbing something off of when you'll be getting free stuff with your order. Thanks for ordering stuff at the store today. Is that Cello is saying who else is in Arizona? So there must be some people coming in from Arizona. DJ's in Nebraska. That's where Budget jumped off. And what is this? I get a lot of emails from FPC, but I don't mind. They're doing a lot in Maryland. All right. Then we get, here's what we were talking about, Gun Culture 2.0, and now Walt's in here, so we could pick his brain about that. He's saying it's a professor at Wake Forest University writing a book. And then that brings us up to date. So Walt, did you happen to check out any of the Texas stuff that was happening with Clover? I can't remember if you jumped in. I think you did jump in a couple times.
Yeah, I jumped in a couple times, and I was pretty excited. I think my only question that I haven't been able to follow up on is just the current status with amendments.
Right. The question from Makojo out there earlier was, did you have a favorite person that came up to speak? So like while you were watching, did any of them ring?
I didn't keep track of any of the names. I was listening in the background, so I paid more attention to just like ideas as opposed to people, or like stories as opposed to people. There were some weird ones though, for sure. Gosh, who was it? The person who said like, who was the person that was like, I might hurt myself or someone else with a gun, so no one can have one. Like they had some weird like takes. But yeah, I didn't pay too much attention to names or anything like that. So sorry for my lackluster coverage, guys. But Clover was doing such a bang up job, I could leave it to him.
Well, it's 10 hours, so it'd have been tough. I mean, definitely everybody can remember the one lady that just got like weird and started singing or whatever. And yeah, that one you're talking about, I think, was the one who was like, my dad is an Air Force guy, and he was, he can't do it. So if he can't do it, then nobody can do it. There was a couple like that, but I think overall, there's no way, unless you're weird, there's like no way to absorb all that. So it's more like just watching a river go by, I guess. And, you know, as long as your general impression is that the river, you know, seemed normal, or like, you know, it wasn't flowing backwards, it wasn't flowing with blood, you know, it wasn't a bunch of pollution in it. It was basically interesting to listen to. Most of the arguments for our side were evolving, I think. I've listened to things like this. I don't listen to everything, but I've listened to things like that in the past, and the arguments are not the same. Some of the stuff that Walt would touch on, some of the stuff that the Liberal Gun Club would touch on, like those elements were brought up. Maybe not as eloquently or as like directly, but probably some evolution of way it was explained to them, or what they got out of the explanation, or the pieces of the piece, you know, that they value or something. So that part of it I thought was great. At the same time, or parallel, the other side's arguments were phoned in. Oh my God, they did not even bother to check any old bad data. They just didn't care. And that means that, number one, they're just phoning it in. And number two, no one is scrutinizing the other side at all. They're satisfied to have a warm body there. If the warm body says stuff that gives them a sound bite, they're done. They're satisfied and everybody can go home. So that means that's one of the reasons I was raging at you today when your chat, because you were like, oh, let's get distracted by the first shiny thing that comes along. And I'm like, oh, we're at a time when, like, if we would actually work together, not work together, I hate saying that. If we would all work in unison towards similar goals, we would just wail on them. We'd literally be like, I can't use that as an analogy, but anyway, we would literally be like the wandering herd that would just accomplish what needs to be accomplished, just because we're all mobile and we're already standing up anyway. And that's the thing. Everybody's like, oh, well, we all need to have the same goal. We all have to be working together. I'm like, nah, whenever everybody's standing up and everybody's pissed, that's a pretty good time to say, hey, let's all go over there. And everybody doesn't have to be asked or figure out the best route to get over there. If we just all are up anyway and we're all, fuck it, like, let's go over there. Now, then we can accomplish that. We don't have to, have it all worked out. We're like, at 4:00, we're all going to stand up and we're all going to pound our feet 4 times, and then we're going to walk over there. And if you don't pound your feet 4 times, then don't even bother walking over there. What if we don't stand up at the same time? And then what if only some people mosey over there and other people run? It's like, fuck all that. Like, you can find times in history when people have accomplished great things in unison, but often it's just a couple of people go do something, other people see it happen, a bunch of people walk to that side of the island, the whole thing capsizes. I mean, it happens.
Yeah,
anyway,
I hear that. I was going to say, I don't think working together is the wrong term for what you're describing. Like, it's not saying I have to share your ideology completely. It's not saying I have to, whatever. It's literally, it's just, hey, look, there's a common objective right in front of us. So what we're like, you want to help out, like, I'm pissed, you're pissed. We want to just go do something about that real quick. We get back to arguing, but like, I think that's reasonable to do. I think that's, the American way, right? Like, when something just gets to the point of pissing everybody off, or pissing off enough of the majority to where action starts happening, right? That's what we see. So I'd call that. Yeah, I'd call it working together. I wouldn't say it's ideological. I wouldn't say it's like ideologically possessed. I wouldn't say that it's wrong to do. I think it's okay to say, like, hey, look, there's this person, like, if you were pro marijuana, right? And someone on the left is like, they're super pro marijuana too. And you're like, yeah, I want the government out of that issue, right? Like, if we just like take the guns out of it for a second, and we go hit another issue, any other issue, we'd be like, yeah, I'll work with them on this one piece of legislation that works for both of us. Like, this is America. We have a representative system. We democratically elect our leaders for the most part, so like, yeah, let's work together on that. And then we can go back to fighting out all the other details, and I like, yeah, that's normal. I think where it would be concerning is that, yeah, if we were marching in some kind of partisan ideologue lockstep, I think that would be concerning to everybody, right? Or at least I would hope it would be, because that would be scary. Like, the day when libertarians all believe exactly the same thing, that'd be like scary. Like, we should avoid marching to a party line. We should represent our own ideas, right? But yeah, but
So
occasionally
that's like a
we do get
threshold.
common objectives. Yeah.
Maybe that's the threshold, is to get to where we're comfortable walking in the same parade with somebody without having to also have the hang up of worrying about if you're all, I don't know if the parade's is the right word. There's too much connotation on parade probably at this point. But, if everybody shows up to the same event, sports event, rally, whatever, the idea that if we're not all wearing the same hat or if we're not all wearing the same shirt, then, somehow it's not as effective or somehow we're not all aligned. You're like, fuck out, leave all that. And once, well, I think the more, ever since I've been watching stuff or being aware of stuff, and then as I think of stuff that's happened before I was actually paying attention, it's going more and more towards that. I mean, it's not just more of a matter of when we're going to all realize that we are there already and that we can accomplish great things if we just got past a couple of our hangups. But great things are happening, so it's even a hang-up to even say that. But anyway, did you got any topics? I was just kind of winging through. What I do is I basically go through my Instagram and go backwards and pull things that I think are interesting, because I like to include Instagram. I don't think it's YouTube is interesting, but I don't like it as far as like the only way to get information or anything.
Yeah.
So Instagram was fighting with me today. I think I had way too many links in there. YouTube wasn't letting me open them, but I tried to explain what some of those were. And then of course there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos I linked to. I don't know how much of this you were watching, but we can talk about any of those topics for sure. I try to list these from our Patreons for people that follow this, just to see. I don't follow news almost at all. I'm enjoying actually putting effort into not paying attention to daily news and instead to watching people who are valid and what they're posting. And then I get a little news through osmosis, but because the people I watch aren't, what is the word? Like alarmists, I guess, or jumping to conclusions all the damn time. I only get news very through, like I say, through a filter. But anyway, that hasn't been bothering me because I've been able to work on some projects here. But anyway, that said, if you got any topics, we can look at them.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing that's been on my mind, the thing that kind of got to me a little bit this week and I had to shut out, was I think it was this week or last week. I did the interview with Queer Armorer, which was pretty cool, and it kind of like a new tactical girlfriend type channel, right? So we have a member of like the LGBTQ community, whatever.
I know who the tactical girlfriend is because people have referred to that channel, but I don't know anything about the channel. So when you use it as a descriptor, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So tactical girlfriend, I believe, is a trans woman who basically just started with a pretty straightforward content plan. We're going to talk gun safety. And then we're going to move on into more, kind of sophisticated topics, right? Start with the 101 and just kind of work out and expose kind of just a new audience to firearms, right?
Hold on, am I allowed to not know what what'd you call them? Or,
trans woman, yeah.
Am I allowed to not know what that means?
A transgender person.
Is that somebody who's like born one way and then decided to be another way?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so then and that person's was a gun expert, and then it was like, I'm going to talk about my gun expertness, or is a person of that type and then decided to use that as now I'm going to get into guns and show my evolution of guns?
I think my understanding is they were an expert already.
Okay.
And so
that's figure out what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So just like you might have like a Black or Hispanic gun expert go and expose those populations to firearms, right? And to the Second Amendment and stuff. Same thing with tactical girlfriend, LGBT community.
I feel like we were talking about Reverend Ken Blanchard earlier, right? Dude is Marine and then CIA, right? In like the 80s. And then so in the 90s, when the internet comes around, he starts being a gun content creator, but because he's Black, everybody's like, oh, well, you're a Black gun content creator. It's like, well, I'm a gun content creator and you're throwing that on me. But so in other words, he was an expert sharing knowledge, but because he's an expert sharing knowledge, all of a sudden he's the Black gun knowledge expert.
Yeah. And kind of, yeah, like the expertise is there, right? The background, the identity for, I think a lot of us, right? Like, I think a lot of us would like to say we're kind of past the identity note, like We listen to people for ideas. We just, we hear what they're saying about, how they build this or how they shoot that. And, we can have our comments and stuff, but we're just focused on the ideas, right? But there is a lot of that audience, I think, that doesn't have that or needs to hear it from someone that comes from a different background than them. So like, I'm a white dude in the suburbs, right? I can talk how I want and how I will talk, right? But there's only so many people I'm going to reach with just my background and how I sound and how I deliver, right? And so I think having the Second Amendment is for everybody. So here's all the different groups that are in on the Second Amendment. Here's everyone that's out there practicing their rights. Here's how they're doing it. Like, I think that's really cool. And that was a big reason why I did the interview with Queer Armor, because they were basically just like, yeah, like, I'm not worried about the whole like pronoun thing, whatever. I'm not worried about you getting all my terminology politically correct. My goal is to work with you, establish a relationship. And then if I have an issue with your language, then if I need to, do something, then I can go out there and, make my case. But for now, I want to go not get hung up on the words. I want to get out there and get to know people and just show my story. And that's how I persuade people. And I thought that was really powerful. I think the thing that got to me though, is that I had people in the gun community being like, I can't listen to this person because of who they are. For me, that was concerning. Because I think we're shifting to gun culture 2.0 for sure. I think that's going to be the path forward is definitely showing how 2A's for everyone. And I think like reemphasizing that as we get more and more tribal and partisan with politics, as things continue to drive into identitarianism, I think like we're just going to have to adapt to that reality and show it's a common thing for humans in America. It's a human right in America. So I'm concerned when I don't see people on our side acknowledging that, because you know what I mean?
Our side and their side.
I think our side just being, when I say that, I mean like pro 2A. I mean like for your right to own firearms, to defend yourself, for your right to own firearms because they're your property, and screw everyone else, literally whatever your justification is.
So you mean there's the industry, there's the community or whatever. So but then there's, and I guess the industry would be like the people that make and facilitate, and then the community would be like people that participate and own and possess or whatever. And then eventually end users, I guess. So that is changing as we're speaking. So first off, as far as inclusiveness or whatever, there's been inclusivity. There's more examples of inclusivity as exclusivity as far as the industry from the beginning of everything I'm aware of, I think. But then when you talk about just individuals, there's a story of inclusivity, and you can find examples of exclusivity for sure, but in general, it's inclusivity or whatever. So, I guess what I'm also getting at is it hardly matters what the history of the whole thing was, only to the extent that it isn't as though when I asked like the who's the us and them part of it, it's not like it was in the old days where if you wanted a gun, you had to know a guy like the cop, or like you had to know how the procedure to go into the gun shop or something, like maybe New York. I don't know what it's like in California. I don't think there's any perception of need to, like in New York, I get the idea that if you don't know the procedure of going into a gun shop, like people just don't go into gun shops because they go in inadvertently once and get yelled at and never go in again. So it's just sort of like a forbidden thing that they don't know. So if it's not like that, if gun shops aren't like, we have the guns and you don't even know how to get them. Like nowadays with 3D printing, 80%, and just the concept that gun shops aren't like that and haven't been like that for a long, long time. There's gun shops everywhere. Anybody can be an FFL if they really want. So communities, regions, like everybody, any type of thing can have their own access now, you know what I'm saying? And then outlets as far as middlemen and the distributors and stuff, they don't play favorites. They don't have like weird unions or whatever the words would have been back in the day when like, oh, we don't sell to so-and-so because we don't like the cut of their jib, right? Like now it's, oh, you got money? Here, I don't care. Money's green, you're good. So that's all I'm saying is it's like less and less and less like way for anybody to say like, here's the things you can't have. Like just make a new gun shop. And they've already done that. I mean, there's literally gun shops for cowboy shooters. There's gun shops for pretty much anything I can think of. There's a gun shop for it.
Yeah, I know, like out here in California, it was definitely, I think my first time it was intimidating. And so my first time, you know, like I felt weird and I felt awkward because I'd heard about all the stories of someone coming into a gun shop and then like sounding weird, you know, and like weirding out the guy at the counter. And so he doesn't sell to them or something. And that was something that, like, you know, like I thought about like my first time because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. And I've had friends kind of have that same, you know, feeling in, at least in California, where it's like, it's just intimidating to go in, you know, but it's not that you can't go in and just buy, but it's just like they experience, I think that new feeling of intimidation when approaching something new is pretty normal.
No, yeah, exactly. I was going to say it's very similar to booze, right? Like if you're not somebody who was buying booze illegally when you're 16, and so when you're 21, it's no big deal. You know, it's just officially when you can first buy it. You know, because most people I know are like that. If you're the type of person who waited until you're 21 to buy your first booze legally, like I would imagine it's the same way. You're not hanging out with a bunch of people that buy booze all the time, so you're walking up to the store and it's like, oh, I'm doing the, you know, whatever, going through this threshold. I'm becoming a booze buyer or whatever, alcohol buyer. You know, it's got to be something similar, right? The first time you buy a car, right? You don't. It's not like everybody has the procedure down. You know, you want a car, but you don't know what it's like to go to the dealership or something, if that's even a thing anymore. So yeah, I think for that part of it, you're right there, and it's a significant responsibility that you're buying. I mean, very few people, although there's a lot of people that just buy guns because it's like, oh, I should buy a gun today, and then they go buy a gun like without even thinking about it. That happens, but most people these days in 2021, especially last 20 year 2020, all the new gun owners more than likely weren't like, oh, I know what we should do today, buy a gun, you know, because I couldn't buy toilet paper yesterday. More than likely they were buying a gun with some sort of awareness, the responsibility comes with it and all that. But yeah, I can hear you there. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that you've mentioned it in your chats, and I know that if you're mentioning it, that it's come up before, right, in the Reddits or the Discords or the places I don't watch, but where people are concerned about stuff. But obviously, if there's a bunch of people that don't go into gun shops, like that's a bunch of people I don't know, because I literally spend all my time going into gun shops. So like I never would even be concerned. I've been to gun shops where I'm like, I don't know if I'm welcome here. Like, I don't know where the damn door is, or, you know, those kind of things. Like, you know, am I walking in? Is it open? Like, am I supposed to be here? Like, I've been to places in people's houses and shit, and I'm like, am I in their kitchen? Or, oh, I'm in a gun shop. All right, cool. You know, it's like, I've been to some weird gun shops. But, and I guess I could see that, you know, and then there's definitely, like in Arizona or Tucson here, we have like 16, and I don't know where we're at technically right now, but, you know, when it's rocking and rolling, we got 16 gun shops in town. And yeah, there's, you know, you can imagine there's this extreme there. There's a spectrum, and some of them are friendly and they're like walking into Walmart, anybody can walk in there, and other ones, like, they kind of have a procedure. Like, if you're not in here to buy cowboy guns, then what are you coming in here for? Why'd you saw the sign on the door? Anyway, so one of the other things is you mentioned one time the booze and stuff. So one of the things I mentioned tonight was an older lady. I shouldn't say that. She's probably younger than me, but you know, not a young gun bunny or whatever. Like she's probably grandma. I think I'm allowed to say. When you're a grandma, you're allowed to say that they're grandma, right? But she was posting about a thing. I think because I can't get my Instagram to work. I think it was Bubbles and Bullets, and it was some sort of thing like you were talking about one time where they go shooting and then afterwards drink champagne. And I'm guessing in one of these kind of places that has a snack bar with booze in it at the range for like bachelor parties, or what else would they do there? There's something else that they do at these things besides bachelor parties. Anyway, for different events where the people go shooting and then have a party after. And anyway, so I know again that you've mentioned it before. So if you're mentioning it, it must be coming up in other people's chats. Oh, look who decided to come back in. Anyway, roll call meant it jumped in. I don't know if you're camping or if you're just regular. Barbecue, I think, is regular. But anyway, if you guys want to jump in on that one.
No, I've never done that where I go and shoot and drink champagne. I'm not a champagne kind of guy anyway.
Well, they could have something called Bullets and Beers or Bullets and Brews, I suppose, where it's like a microbrewery or something. Do they have food trucks that are beer microbreweries type of thing, like where they drive up with a bunch of beers, like at an event? They must, right? Unless that's illegal.
I'm gonna Google that.
I remember when I was in the Army, they brought in a beer truck one time, and it had just a bunch of spigots, and everybody brought down their cup that you already had, and then you just walked up as free beer. I mean, that was obviously for the Army. I don't know if that was like they rented. I don't know what the hell that came from, but it exists. So if it exists, I'm guessing now with food trucks, like there must be barbecues, must have seen something like this before. Anyway, I'm just saying that you could have like an outdoor range where you blow a whistle and everybody puts their guns up, and then you have a barbecue. I've seen things like barbecues at private ranges, you know, for like their, what am I trying to say, like a fundraiser or like a picnic fundraiser, you know, range cleanup type of picnic. But often those days, there's no shooting at the range that day. And, you know, if it's like a giveaway or something, all the guns have no magazines, they're unloaded, and people are loaded. So I don't know. I guess once you mentioned that one time, I guess I was thinking like at a golf, you know, like you go golfing and there's the place, what's it called, where you go to drink and...
Oh, like Top Golf?
No, I mean like regular golf. Like there's a place where you go to golf, there's like this main building, and there's like always a bar in there where the drinker, they start drinking, and then they'll
the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And then they'll drive around with coolers drinking. And I imagine, I guess when you first explained it to me, that's what I was thinking you were thinking. And I'm like, dude, nobody does that. Like, I wish, like, I've never seen that. Like, I've never heard of like people going 5-stand, or that's the only thing where you walk around basically. But I've never heard, right? 5-stand, whatever that's called, where you walk around. I've never heard of that, where people walk around with beer or nothing. Although, honestly, I can't imagine why, if you can golf, why the hell couldn't you do that? I don't think anybody would, because it would probably mess with your aim. You wouldn't be good at it, and it would probably be dangerous. But if it was like on your land and it was you and your uncle or you and your kids or something, like I'm assuming people go out and shoot like that privately. But I can understand why you wouldn't have that publicly. But that's what I thought you were talking about, is some sort of like golf type of thing where you kind of get sloshed while you're shooting. But the after event, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess I could see places where they don't consider that like crazy or whatever, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think the event that I saw, they advertised like I think they advertised. I'm trying to remember. I think they advertised the drinking before, which is what kind of caught me off with it.
You mean like technically like we're gonna drink and then we'll go shooting after?
Yeah, it was like, and it's like, why are you gonna go get a whole bunch of people drinking unknown amount? Like, you know what I mean? And then you're gonna go. It's like I wouldn't say that and then say, okay, now that everybody's drunk, we're gonna go hit the racetrack, right? Like. You know, and it's not that I don't want you to be able to demolition derby or whatever, you know, it's just some activities you shouldn't be drunk for. Like, I'm not opposed. And I don't think most people are opposed to like, hey, look, yeah, you cleared off the range as part of your group's event, whatever, you're cleared off your range, your weapons are safe. You guys practice responsibly. Go ahead and, you know, do your thing. Like, go ahead and go grab a beer. But yeah, like that's not a big deal. I think it's like, it's like when you advertise them together in such a way where it's like the activities are interchangeable, you go take a shot and go jump on the range, you know, walk back. It's like, no, okay, no. That's where I'm like, full stop. That's not a good look. Let's not.
No, actually, I'm wondering if actually they made a point of it. I was going to say the thing that it was in Vegas at the Pro Gun Club, the Red October. I went to like the 4th or 5th one of that, whatever year, it was 2 years ago. And they have a clubhouse or a pro house, whatever it's called, and pro club, whatever that's called, where they have a bar, like a golf course. But it was at this range. But the way they did it is it was sort of like a gun show mixed with a shooting event. So there was a whole bunch of the different berms or the different lanes, whatever you want to call it, like the different ranges at the facility. Were all used up by the event. Most of them they were shooting guns at. Maybe every other one they weren't shooting guns at, and it was more like a gun show where they were showing you stuff. You could buy some stuff even. But then there was also a thing happening, like a competition happening. So there was definitely some gunfire happening, and there were certainly ones where if the distributor or the manufacturer or somebody wanted to let you shoot guns, you could pull triggers on them. So it was like, you know, a gun familiarization or whatever you want to call that. Type of event too. So I think that one though, they made a point that at like whatever time, let's say 5 o'clock, it ended, and then at 6 o'clock everything had to be empty and pulled or whatever, so that they gave you plenty of time to make sure it was a buffer. And then the bar started serving booze. But that was definitely like a, an event with both, with the dividing line. And I suppose if they ran that differently, it could get sloppy and people could have had access to going back and forth or some sort of stuff. But again, that's something where maybe that's I don't know. I wouldn't say that's even like city, rural. I mean, that's just more like if the group of people is, I don't know, that's a big thing to them or not, maybe. But I don't know, have you guys ever heard of anything else that's mixes booze and guns at all? The A and the F part of the ATF? Most of these things would allow smoking, so there would technically be all three.
No, we don't have that stuff around here. Everybody's lame.
Now, I have a friend that in their golf courses in the winter, you can skeet shoot on them, or trap shoot, or whatever it would be, trap probably. And I forget how he said it comes out, but I don't know the layout of a golf course. Basically, he told me, and I just don't understand it. But it sounds like they still use the clubhouse to, you drive up and park and everything, go into the clubhouse, pay or whatever, and then you go out to whatever the first holes would be or something, the closest holes, and that's where you shoot the shotguns or what. I'm wondering if something like that, where they're dual purposing something that's already got the bar, and the bar is part of how they make money. If that's something where you go and you shoot and get drink to get warm, drink to get a buzz, and then go out there and shoot a couple of things because it's relatively low risk, shooting a shotgun at a thing that's flying through a big field and then come back in when it's cold again and drink more. I don't know. I wonder if that's, he didn't say nothing about that. I have no idea if that's the way it is, but it seems like that could be a potential for something like that. I'm sure in Canada they would do something like that. That definitely seems Canadian.
Yeah, it might be like cultural too, like, because I mean, like, there's probably cultures out there, like, because like, let's be real, right? If you were in like deep south, whatever, and someone was talking about drinking a beer and shooting a 100-yard target off their porch, probably no one batting an eye at that, right?
Oh no, I mean that's everywhere. I've lived everywhere. Right. I've lived. People on their own property will drink and shoot,
right?
But not like,
not like a public range
competition. Definitely not a public range, but like just more like we're sitting around having a picnic and you can shoot on your land or whatever, and it's like, hey, bring out that rifle and shoot it, and then they'll shoot it once, and then usually somebody goes, quit shooting that rifle or whatever, and then they'll put it away. But I've definitely seen people shoot, and then there's definitely people that just have their own ranges where they'll be shooting, because they're going to drink a beer anyway, and they'll just be shooting. But it's not like they're drunk or nothing; they're just drinking a beer.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that like I think also my generation's like I guess like perception of I think that is something where we have to account for a cultural difference there too, because our perception with alcohol, God, if you're an old fogey in this chat, you know what I'm talking about when I say like in the 80s, like someone's talking about driving drunk and how stupid it is that there's laws about it because it's totally fine. Like that was a cultural thing. Like I still have and the reason I know about that is that I have like radio like disc jockeys or whatever where I live that talk about that and are like, yeah, driving drunk, it's really not a big deal and stuff. And I'm like, you're saying this in like 2015, guys, but that was the culture at the time for them. It was like, yeah, just straight up like the whole drunk driving thing. No, like if you're too sloshed to drive, then sleep. But otherwise, yeah, if you can drive, you can drive. People do it all the time. It's not a big deal. 2 out of 9 drivers on the highway or driving, intoxicated, whatever. It's really not a big deal, guys. It happens all the time. And we've heard that. And I think my generation's been seeing like the, MAD, like drive up or drive down the acceptable legal limit for alcohol. Right. And we've been seeing, I think that, so we've been getting climatized to like, basically, oh, you have any drink, you shouldn't be driving, when that's like, even like 1 drink would still keep you under the legal limit and whatever. So it's like, yeah, I could see it being cultural in a lot of ways.
Well, generational?
Yeah, cultural for the generation. Yeah.
Because the thing that you perceive happening in the 80s happened in the 70s or 60s. Okay. In the 70s, I mean, I'm alive in the 80s and 70s. I was a little kid in the 70s, so I was alive in the 80s. I was definitely driving in the late 80s, right? So Dare and moms and shit, the good moms, the moms against drunk driving. That was like 80s Dare and shit. Like that barely happened in my lifetime. So before that, everybody knew drunk driving was dumb and shit, and cops would pull you over. It wasn't since black and white movies that it was like one for the road, and like, drinking and driving isn't a big deal except you're going to spill it or whatever. Like, so that was a long time ago, but that was also when cars first came around, and there was very few cars on the road. So by the time you get to the 70s and cars with massive power, horsepower compared to the first cars just barely moved. I mean, they were kind of fast, but they took a while to get going, so you could be drunk, and people were definitely used to drinking on a horse. Like in the olden days, people drank constantly because water wasn't safe, and you had a thing that walked where you went home for you. Like you could be drunk as fuck on a horse, and definitely drunk as fuck on a wagon, because your horses went to where they were going. Like they knew what they were doing. So it was definitely like, and remember, my grandparents lived with horses and shit, right? They cars were also around, but the horses still were around, like just the same way that you see 70s cars. Like my grandparents seen horses, like in wagons and shit. People still would use a horse instead of a car once in a while. But so it's just that many generations ago that horses were still around. So cars and shit like you're talking about definitely all happened. But I think a lot of that was, again, I guess, what am I trying to say? Like how full or how crowded the roads were. And then now the roads are insane. So yeah, there's so many more, or there's still probably a ton of people that are drinking and driving all the damn time. And the reason I say that is because every time I walk near a road, holy moly, those little tiny bottles that you would get in like a airplane or in a hotel, the little tiny bottles, the travel bottles or whatever that's called, like the little tiny, but what single, I don't know, is that a single drink bottle? All over the place. Holy moly, like cigarette butts. All over the place. So it's, wherever I walk, I figure there's either like one drunk motherfucker or a bunch of people that drink and do the same thing. And I figure, what, you're drinking so you don't want to get pulled over, so you just wing it. So it's just like a cigarette butt. We're just seeing, as you walk, you're seeing the remnants of the same person getting drunk every day on the way to work or home or whatever it is. So yeah, there's got to be a bunch of still people drinking. They're just probably the kind of people that are drunk constantly, and they're not unsafe. They just always have some level of alcohol in them.
Yeah.
It's the people that are like, I'm at a party and I'm not used to drinking, or I'm normally drunk, but now I'm really drunk, or I'm pissed tonight, or I'm so happy. Those are the idiots that get in wrecks and stuff. But no, I hear you. There's that. I'm not discounting everything you just said. It's just it shifted by like 10 years in front of us, because I can't even, I don't even know. I think there was one time I can remember where I might have been drunk driving, but you know what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't even consider it. And I don't know anybody that could. There's just too much risk, and there's like no gain. There's like, it's not something you just do casually. So I think that's probably 10 years before. Because I don't, like I say, I can't think of anybody. And I don't know when all that stuff happened. Whenever Mad against drunk driving, that was sort of already established by the time I was, by the time TV ads and stuff and magazines.
Yeah, I'm just like,
that might have something to it too.
Yeah.
I grew up to where I was just in the shadow. Like I knew kids that could drink because they would grandfather them, but I never was able to drink until 21. I could go to places like Canada and drink before I was 21 legally, but I couldn't. No state allowed me to drink until I was 21. The Army let me. Now, did you ever get to drink early in the Army?
Not officially.
It was only because of a general or whoever the hell the base commander moved, and I was training. And you know how it is. So I don't know if it's like that all the time or if that was a unique thing, but they were like, there's a big party for the base commander, so everybody's blah, 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 proclamation. You all are our property, and there's no drinking age. Everybody can drink. There's going to be a beer truck. Bring your cups down. It was weird.
Yeah,
and
I know.
That happened before. Like that was the only time it ever.
Yeah, I know on my end, I only drank a few times in the Army. And I think almost all of them were when I was underage, actually. Like under 21 anyway. But yeah, but we weren't strictly speaking, I don't think I was allowed to. I think I got away with it. But like I couldn't even drink. Like it depended on where we were, because some people were a stickler for it. I couldn't drink for my own our unit through like whatever party when we came back from deployment, right? Like I couldn't even drink for that. Which was lame because like I think I was like the only person at my table that had deployed, and I had to do like color guard for the damn thing, and I had to like be on like the a weapons detail and like drive the weapons back to the reserve center or whatever. So like I couldn't drink that time, even though it was my own party, just because we were back home. But like when we were out at doing our pre-deployment training, whatever, I was getting hammered, but also like, even in that context, all the weapons were locked up, right? So, and guarded. So it was like, it didn't matter,
and there's definitely a culture of like, you can have as much fun and get loose as you want, but not anywhere near that, not with that in your hand, idiot. Like there's way too much risk, right? Like way too much awareness. There's too many, unless you are completely lone, you're not gonna, and way plastered, right? Like, and that must not happen because we would hear about it, like so and so ate a grenade or whatever weird thing would happen, like this stuff.
Yeah, I had a sergeant who actually got, I think, busted for that. I think the story was something like they had their weapons, they deliberately unloaded them, and I think it was on a deployment or something, but they got a little bottle of hooch or whatever, and they decided to go hide out with it, and they had the weapons on them because it was a deployment environment, whatever. But they unloaded them because they were gonna go get sloshed, and that was their intention. And then I think they got caught, and so then he got busted. And I think that was something that stuck around for a while for him. But I think his career recovered. But that's the thing that happens. Like I
forget. That's interesting. I was in like the 90s, like 80s into the 90s, so nothing was going on. And from what I've been listening to a lot of these interviews and stuff with dudes that have been in from now and then from now and stuff, definitely different. Like, there's a lot more rules and paying attention to crap when I was in than when you're deployed somewhere and actually doing something. When you knew. I mean, actually, they probably didn't bother teaching you half the stupid ass rules, but there was a bunch of dumb shit that you just had to worry about because nobody else had anything else to yell at you about. So they'd yell at you about dumbass shit, and there was nothing going on. So it was just way more tedious back in the day. So I can imagine just a complete night and day is what I guess I'm saying. It's probably night and day as far as being in the service back in the day.
I can only imagine, like from what I've been told, like entirely different. Like it's very, I think if everything feels very administrative, like at least at the point where I was in, and I hear
it's a mentality of World War II goes into World War, whatever, I guess not World War, but World War II. Well, World War I mentality is in World War II because all the dudes from World War I who were sergeants and worthwhile were back for World War II to teach the new recruits how to survive and win, right? So we had experience teach interested parties. That became experience. And then you have Korea, who those guys come back and just do, right? And then a couple of new people come along. And then Nam, you got some of those guys just fucking literally come back and do it for a fucking third time or a second time sometimes, but definitely teaching a bunch of unwilling often, but, still wanting to stay alive motherfuckers who were born in a whole different generation, the baby boomers kids already, I think. So, or the baby boomers, right? So, Nam was a whole different thing, but all of this was being taught off that World War I wooden guns, with a metal barrel, bolt action going into semi-auto, but like you're holding 8 rounds and you're fighting people with the same tech. Then you get into Nam, and then that's where I come in. So when we're getting yelled at, nothing is happening in the world, and the whole training element was yell at you, punish you. It's like fucking watching Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
And they figured out somewhere in there, like different countries started figuring out that works for conscripts, but it's not necessary for volunteers. And we're all volunteers and there's nothing going on. So all of this yelling at us and hurry up and wait and police shit, paint a rock, fucking that kind of weird shit. They were developing the end of that, I guess, or the beginning of the next. And then we have a change in everything. So anyway, that's all I was figuring out too, is after listening to some of this, like, wow, there's a lot of evolution and change going on there. And it, from every level, like, and then obviously the war changes from like bullets and again guns that are made out of wood and shit and, you know, compasses to like GPS, plastic guns, drones, and fucking remote shit and whatever. It's just crazy. Listening to the helicopter pilots talk about, you know, the drastic difference between non-pilots and now airplanes are different. It's just crazy. So Ozzy's saying he missed Vietnam by 3 years. Holy moly.
It's all good. I missed it. I missed it by 30. So, you know,
being born. So yeah, a lot of stuff about drinking age. I don't remember even the first time. Well, I'm already drunk like a little kid when somebody would give you a beer. Is that a thing nowadays? Somebody's like, "Oh, give the little kid a beer," and then they let you sip a beer, and then you go, "Oh, I don't like it," or something, and they go, "Ha ha ha!" The kid drink a beer. Is that still a thing? Do people do that to their kids?
I haven't run into parents that do that, like that are my age, but I know, like, that was the thing I saw parents do when I was a kid. So
I think, I don't know if that must still be a thing, because that's just if you're maybe the age of the parent, maybe, or like how concerned. Because I guess it depends on if the parents are drinking socially or just getting sloshed, because a bunch of drunk parents are going to be different than a bunch of parents who are barely, you know, testing new whatever, what are they called, fancy beers or whatever. At least I'm assuming people that are drinking fancy beers all the time, they don't get drunk, right? They're just like, oh, this tastes fruity, or this one tastes like grapes or whatever, and then taste the next one and then quit drinking. Anyway, so let's see. That's about it. We had drinking age chat come up. We chatted about the lady with the drinking and bullets thing. That was about the only two things that I think Walt had brought up before. Barbecue jump back in. Roll call. I don't know if you guys have any topics for the week. I was shouting out roll call earlier for posting the stuff about the museums. Thanks for that. The museum.
Yeah, that place is awesome.
Anybody watch the South Carolina thing with Night Strike was hosting?
I watched a little bit of it.
Definitely different after watching the Texas one, which really thought the Texas one was a bigger room. Eventually they showed it from like an angle and I'm like, oh dang, that room's not that big, but it was still like at least twice as big as the South Carolina room. South Carolina room is like everybody was in a hotel room yelling at each other from like two sides of the bed. It was small. And is bloviate? I think bloviate's the right word. Like the bloviation level or the spectrum of bloviation in South Carolina was just like at a whole nother level than, I mean, Texas sounded like those people like to hear themselves, but South Carolina, holy moly. It's like they're practiced at listening to themselves talk and they like it even better. Yeah. Anyway, so those were interesting. I think we kind of talked about it before, just to kind of listen to in the 30,000 foot view, if that's a way to describe it, you know, just to almost listen to in the background. And I don't know, it's almost not effective in a way because you're only hearing the one side. I guess it's interesting or worthwhile to listen to if you're really interested in hearing that kind of thing and you got the time to do it, where there's nothing else going on or whatever. But you might hear an interesting or a new position from the antis, but what can you do about it? You know, you're not debating them, so all you do is yell at your screen about it. Am I cutting out? I'm seeing my little connection thing.
No, I can hear you. Yeah, I think like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like as I'm getting more and more worn into this, I'm just realizing that it's, as far as the anti side is concerned, it's been just so much of more of the same that I like. It's starting to become less concerning to me. And I think the reason for it is just, it's like, hey, like they've been saying the same things, but when we look at practical, like legislative outcomes, especially federally, like it's been pretty much non-starters for them, you know? That's not to say that stuff can't happen or that we shouldn't be aware. It's just like, you know, they can only get so far with the same tired arguments with the same, you know, people. And the fact that like we're looking at doing stuff differently, and that there's a lot of openness to different approaches now, I think is just tremendous for us. So, I mean, I guess just to kind of piggyback on that, it just made me think of that. But
what about the gun culture 2.0? You said you got a chance to watch that guy. I've talked about him, but I think I mentioned I don't get him. Like, I haven't read his book, obviously, because I don't think he's written it yet, or if he has, I haven't read the one he's written. But I don't. Maybe it's the jokes I don't get, or if he's whatever. I seem to be missing him in some way. So, what did you get a chance to check out? Is it? I guess I haven't even looked at his YouTube channel. I've only looked at his Instagram.
I think he had like a seminar that I started watching, and like he had like a half-hour talk or whatever that he was giving. And that's where I got started. And then I started doing a little bit of reading on it. But yeah, I think the best way to kind of summarize gun culture 2.0 with what I've currently seen is like approaching it is kind of my angle a bit. But I think his idea is probably more evolved and probably more technically precise than mine. But I think he definitely seems to be focusing on guns from the self-defense angle, and how self-defense is something that everybody needs to be included on, like, because it's a human right. So there's a lot there, but that angle takes it out of, this false narrative that guns are just about, old racist white guys or something, that like, some very like Democratic Party sounding narrative, right? It's like, that's not what guns are about at all. We're going to demonstrate to you that everybody has an interest in this, right? And so it's about inclusivity. It's about human rights. And it's just kind of, I think it's just like it's a fresher, more modern approach that's, I think, a little more centered on those aspects, as opposed to maybe what we might call like traditional gun culture.
Right on. But okay, so I understand. I think what you're saying. Let me ask then: is it something that he's writing for the new gun owners, and then that would be palatable for an NPR interview, or for the people that listen to NPR and who have an open mind?
Yeah, I think it would be pretty palatable. I think it's the type of gun culture that like you could see a lot of like the liberal types in America, right? Yeah, like it's the type of gun culture you could see like the blue-haired college student getting behind. You know what I mean?
No. So that's interesting. What is blue-haired mean?
When I say
whatever thing is hip.
I mean like your college student stereotype, like that ultra progressive, whatever, screams about how woke they are, that type. So whenever I say like
your college kid that's just following the trends of whatever's current to be hip or whatever. So not so much like the radical, like angry college kid.
Yeah, like they're just like I'm going with the flow. The flow is telling me, this value is good and that, you're right. And this is something where it's about
probably a majority, not like the fringe, but like maybe not the majority, but like at least a big chunk, as opposed to just a trickle little fringe, like the angry fringe of college, but like the more majority, we're buying coffee and we care about the future. And this is a piece that we're now aware of because he gave it to us in a palatable way.
Yeah, and so basically the point is going to be something along the lines of, hey, like gun culture 2.0 is really focusing on self-defense and not just about the nuance of firearms and appreciating the history of firearms and whatever. It's not that stuff's not important. Like, and I think that if we lost that, we'd be losing a massive part of our culture, right? But it's really centered around, hey, look, self-defense is this like universal thing that everybody has an interest in, so we can include everybody on it. And so, yeah, I think he goes so far as to point out, like, hey, look, like if we're looking at the science of it, right? We have a lot of progressive, like well-off, but also like racially diverse, people. I think in the blog, I'm seeing if I can pull up that blog article now. I think he says, yeah, gun culture 2.0 is more inclusive because self-defense is a universal concern. Empirically, defensive gun owners tend to be more racially diverse, more urban and suburban, more politically liberal, more female, and more likely to have young kids than traditional gun owners. And he says in many ways they're like me.
He's saying that's trending, or it's at that point.
He's saying, like, I mean, he's a sociologist, right? He's saying, no, this is what the data is saying. The data is saying
in other words, like, this is the existing demographic, or it's trending towards that demographic shift.
No, like currently the demographic for those who would have defensive gun, yeah. So
do you think it's going to be? Is that data like already there, or he's alluding to that's the data is going to say that?
He's a sociologist, and it looks like he has that data. Yeah, he has that data. I'm going to send you this in private chat if you want to pull it up.
Sure. So I appreciate that summary for damn sure, because, like I say, I haven't had a chance to come up here to look at that. I didn't know what it was. So let me ask. I appreciate that. And if anybody wants to ask Walt stuff about this, go ahead. So that same question. Is he attempting to, or would it at least be palatable to the Reddits? And I just mean the Reddits in general, who are like, I consider the Reddits that are going to object for the sake of objection, are going to ridicule for the sake of ridicule, are going to challenge for the sake of, like, I don't know why they do shit. So, there's the people that are going to abuse and be concerned and offended, but because they're not girls, we're not supposed to call them Karens or whatever. So is his book going to appeal to them, or at least resist them, or is it going to be fragile to that, or is it going to be resistant to that? Is it made out of plastic or glass, or is it made out of fragile porcelain? It's going to,
I think he's going to appeal to a lot of people, because basically, like, if you were to look at Reddit right now and look at like liberal gun owners, or you're going to look at like Socialist Rifle Association or whatever, right? You can go like look for this like quote unquote politically liberal. The socialists would hate me for using that terminology, but those people that are left of, let's say, who we envision as the traditional gun owner, right? That stereotype. It's like, well, okay. Well, if the data is showing that they're actually using it more, we have data showing that, like, I think there's about as many hate crimes as there are homicides in the U.S. roughly. We have a lot of data indicating that. And if half of hate crimes are violent, right? That means that, if you're part of one of these minority groups and you're going to go on Reddit and say, hey, look, I'm a gay man, or hey, look, I'm a trans person, and I carry a firearm for my protection because I see all these crazies out here that are, these bigots that are threatening me, or I've been threatened before, or, I get these remarks and this and that. That's really difficult to come to someone and say, oh, well, your experience as a victim is invalid, right? This is why Moms Demand Actions presented such a problem for us, is that they're coming in and looking at things from the perspective of, hey, look, we're victims, right? And then now what you were put in a position of is saying your victimhood doesn't matter, which is just a bad place to be in with that kind of narrative, right?
Well, okay, you're saying a perception of the historic battle has been that they get to champion the victim, where in reality I would say that they are going to be looked at in history as being the horrible people that exploited those victims. But anyway, I hear what you're saying.
I'm just talking about like the state of the optics and why they've chosen that rhetoric, right? I'm not talking about the truth of it.
But what you're saying, his efforts, and I was asking about if it was going to resist to Reddit or not. But you're saying not only that, but it'll also be like basically sort of like an antibiotic spray for the Mom's Demand strategy, because obviously it set challenges other positions.
Like they're in a really bad spot if they have to tell trans people to disarm, right? Like they're talking about how progressive and how inclusive they are with Moms Demand Action. Well, now they're telling minority groups to give up the only thing that they have that's protecting them in their eyes, right? Which is firearms. So I mean, so it's like when you kind of factor all that in, I think it just kind of comes to like, we're in a good place to say this is a narrative that can work. I think it is working. I think we should continue to lay it on.
I'm not done asking questions yet. So I appreciate again the insight, because you obviously, like say, got a better way. You've seen it, and you got more effective way to answer these ones. So I asked if how it would react to like the people that I would call the liberal gun owners. People go around calling themselves liberal gun owners. People.
They eat it up, dude. They love it. They love it.
Well, I knew it was kind of made for them, so I kind of figured that was a softball. So I understand it's made for them. But then I'm asking the people in Reddit, and you said that what did you say? It would guilt them, or it would?
Or no, they eat it up. Like there's not the like
Okay,
on
so the
Reddit.
people on Reddit aren't looking to take this apart. They're going to take this and champion it. So he's going to be on the shoulders of Reddit. He's not going to.
I think so.
Reddit is not going to be like a chipper shredder to this project.
No, like you might get some in like certain Reddits, right, that will try to swing at it. So like there's the r/gun control, but they're really feeble and weak. I think they have less members than I do subscribers, which is pretty low.
Oh, so you're saying the only entities on Reddit that would go after this are going to be like the mom's equivalent to the anti-gunners.
Yeah, like the people that really want to go after this, that would like really need to pick it apart.
All right, so I appreciate that. So then the next thing is industry. How does his project or what you've seen of it address? Is it designed to address or does it? You know what I'm saying? Is it palatable to industry? Is it going to be useful to industry? Does it address them at all, or is it oblivious to them? I suspect it's oblivious.
I think it's kind of more like factoring them in. So like the way that he would put it is that like gun control or gun culture 1.0 is about like the hunting and recreational side. So like the old school NRA that was like, we're a bunch of hunters, right? That's what we do, you know, or we're a bunch of target shooters. That's what we do. 3
iterations ago, but you're saying that
right, like old school, yeah,
all the old school stuff. So, but I guess what I'm asking more is like, is his reason for doing this, is it focused at all on progressing the industry, awakening the industry, like illustrating something, the facts to the industry? Is it just preaching to the choir, to the liberal gun owner, here's our manifesto? Or is it like, hey, industry, listen to this, and here's a bunch of ways you can use this to now learn to be better in industry?
I don't see him saying anything really to the industry. I see him making comments about the industries, right? About the industry and how it's progressed. But yeah,
I just wanted to, and I don't expect you to know everything, but it's just, I can't ask him. And then I guess the same thing, I'm assuming it's the same. He doesn't give a shit about the culture. He's like, the existing gun people are what we're resisting, and this is an alternative to the existing. So there's nothing in here to like reach out or like, hey, if you're somebody who's gun culture 1, here's the translation to 2. It's more like, fuck you, you're 1, this is 2. If you want to read this, you can, but I'm not here to translate nothing. You're on your own. You're the old people that got us to where we are today.
Yeah, like he's pointing out, what he's doing is he's just pointing out the transition here, and he's saying, hey, look, there's an opportunity for you, right? There's a decline in the old like sportsman hunting culture, and there's an increase in the self-defense culture, right? And that's what we're seeing right now. So how people are approaching the Second Amendment, that's his difference. That's how he's splitting that up.
Oh, really? So when you're saying self-defense, you're not just using that as an example, like that's his example, self-defense, gun culture 2.0.
Yeah. Like
that's dumb as shit. He's a professor. I mean, holy fuck, that's just technically wrong. That would be like at least, and I'm not even smart about it, but that's at least the 3rd iteration of gun culture. But I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding, he's saying that gun culture 1 was everything up until now, and gun culture 2 is self-defense.
No, he's saying gun culture 1 was when we transitioned to hunting and sport. He does note a 0.
Oh, okay. So it went from 0 to hunting. Then he thinks there wasn't an assault weapons ban, and that there wasn't the constitutional carry, like whatever you want to call, like that 1980s wave, and that there wasn't the transitions from world. So like I say, I don't know them all either. That's my goal, is to actually figure them all out and then not put something on it. But that's interesting, because I'm not trying. You don't have to defend him. I just want to make sure the idea is like represented accurately, and then we can comment, however. But yeah. So gun culture 0 is the what he's saying in this blog article is it's basically like the colonial like gun culture, like from the revolution, right? Like that's the start for us here in America, right? So he's saying that's the start. Eventually we transition to that 1.0 kind of around the 20th century, where this becomes like, this is how you get your food. This is about sports. This is about, target shooting and this and that.
And then we get to 2.0, which is more modern, right? Which is like this stuff, like look at the market. This is going to conceal carry, right? We're seeing a decline in hunting over time, and like who participates in hunting over time. We're seeing an increase in like the self-defense shooting market. We can just track the numbers of ads for hunting guns versus self-defense firearms, right? Like, you know, like by every metric he's looking at, he's like, yeah, there's a transition. There's a transition to self-defense here, and that's more or less what he's saying.
Okay, I'm looking at it as you're saying this, so it's kind of neat. But yeah, I still disagree with him 100%. He doesn't even incorporate the transition of the what do you call it, like handing down guns from one generation to the next, and the culture that it grows. So he might be watching the new stuff that happens, but that doesn't factor in any of the stuff that continues to be there. But it'll be interesting to follow.
Yeah, I don't think he thinks it's dead either. Like I think it would be a very strange argument if he does think that like, oh, the sportsman culture is dead. It's like, no, it's not. Like that's obviously false. So,
well, no, but you can call it like a change, like a metamorphosis or whatever he's calling the culture change or whatever. I'm thinking of it as different, whatever. I'm thinking of a different thing, probably obviously more than he is. He's just thinking of it as like the general evolution of the culture looks like. Because he's incorporating like literally everything into 0, 1, and 2. And 2 isn't necessarily a time. It's just, like you just said, where he thinks that it goes to center on armed self-defense. But anyway, I don't know if that's necessarily an evolution of our culture or just that until guns could be practically used for that, and then afforded by people or whatever. So we'll see how much he gets into all that. That's all the stuff I'm interested in too. So,
yeah, I'll keep diving in on it too, because I just started getting into it. I did finish a little bit of content there, but I want to get into like a lot more to like really digest his idea. I also want to see what he's actually written on the academic side. I think that would be cool to kind of break down. So
well, that's the other part, is he's got some kind of class or something. So I wasn't even sure of the scope of the whole thing. And then as soon as you kind of described the scope, I started asking you like the focus of what you've seen of the scope. So we don't even know everything he's working on or what all he's trying to do with it. But the thing is, I'm finding, unfortunately, that, it's not like it all fits together. It'd be great if it was all Tetris and you were really good at Tetris and you just wait for somebody who's really good at Tetris to be really good at Tetris and solve it for us all. But, every once in a while, when stuff falls together, it's awkward and, it just doesn't fit. So, when I see... I don't see too much, actually. I see there's, a lot, as I'm discovering everything in 2A, all the history and whatnot. I guess one of my problems is that recently I found out that there's this revolving door of situation, or pendulum, I think is a better way to describe it. And I think it is a revolving door is a better way to describe it. And I've mentioned this many times where there's, people get concerned for whatever reason, politically or whatever. They get concerned about their safety or whatever. They become a gun owner and they get all upset and they get active, and then they're successful or not. And they stick around for a while and then they get just, apathy or whatever. They get distracted and then they're not activists anymore. And somebody else comes along and then repeats the cycle, right? And I've found that I guess I came to the awareness that I've been trying to pull everybody together to like, say people are like, hey, don't leave. There's new people coming and we can all be working together. And there's lots of people that are just as actively like, oh no, let the other people, the old people go. Like they're useless, and the new people got the money, and the new people are easier to sell the same package of goods to. So we'll just stand here with the same introductory guide and the illusion of level 2 and the suggestion that there's a level 3, and there's we talk about a level 4, but no one's ever stuck around to actually see a level 2. Because the way we got this worked out is that every 10 years there's something that causes everybody to get upset, and enough people come in to pay the bills, and that part's getting frustrating. So I'm trying to look at this whole thing as how we can break maybe that cycle or just get beyond that cycle so that those people are less gateholders or less crucial in the whole thing, so that anybody who wants to isn't distracted or waste time with the people that are, I don't know what to call that. Is it just sitting there at the revolving door handing out a pamphlet, which is what it seems like a lot are basically offering?
I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that I feel like almost the easier way to say it would just be pissing into the wind, you know? Um,
Well, I don't mean ineffectively. I mean, like, if you've got a bunch of people that are getting off the bus in LA and you've got somebody who's like, hey, I got just what you're looking for. Like, here's a map, the blah, 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 and it's $10. And then by the time the person figures out, hey, this map was useless, they've already done something else and they don't care about that $10. So that guy who's ripping people off at the gate, I guess that's what I'm saying, more like the person that's not really helping much, but they're offering it as if they're helping, and maybe even some of them have the idea that they are helping, but because they don't really pay attention to what the people are doing once they walk by, you know, they don't realize they're selling them a bum map, that it's worthless and that nobody's using it, that if they check the garbage can behind them, it's full of their maps. The reason they're getting their maps so cheap is because somebody's taking them out of the garbage and selling them right back to them, and they're just a cog in a gear, maybe, you know what I mean? So it's not like everybody's deceptive. It's just that we've got these mechanisms in place where, you know, we just don't have leadership, really. We don't have like like I say, somebody playing Tetris who's like, oh no, the best effective use of time is for you people who get upset about this. You people spend your time doing this. So we've got to, that's what I was kind of getting back to before, you know, so I'm trying to see all this and then figure out how to, I don't know, like I say, make a map.
Yeah, I think I think it's just about that. It's about coordination, right? And it's about like on the individual level, like I look at what I do, right? And I'm like, okay, so what I want to do over the next several months is start focusing on like video essays where I get to really hammer out core subjects that matter to us, like self-defense, like property, like you know, things that are all tangential to this conversation, and then take those things and then like factor them in, how the government needs to deal with risk, how we've decided to do that. And my reason for getting into all those particulars is that when I flush this out, then I can create a paper that's going to have, you know, this argument in it that's pretty defensible given certain axioms that we accept, right? And that's all philosophy is. So
how long of videos are you talking, like 5-minute things, 50-minute things?
I think it's just going to depend on what I'm arguing. I think if I can argue it well, it will be shorter. I think if I suck, it will take longer. But I would like to plan on like a comprehensive like 20-minute presentation. I think that would be my target right now. But if I wound up being able to cut it down to 10 minutes and being able to justify everything that well, I think that would be great.
And you're saying basically just using the techniques or skills or tools of philosophy and applying them to guns or self-defense or guns, I hope, or to Second Amendment issues at least.
Exactly.
In 2021, not like theoretically or blah, 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 but like today. And then making I don't know, like let's say there's a knife and a fork and a spoon of philosophy. You're going to say like, this is how the knife applies to Second Amendment in 2021. This is how the fork applies. Here's how the spoon applies. And then once everybody's got some like awareness of your playing field, then you can go, now here's some table manners, or here's a way to efficiently eat a steak or something.
Yeah, and like basically to use the setting the dinner table analogy, what I've done thus far is I've suggested that there is a dining room. That's basically the equivalent of my content thus far. So if I'm going to try to prove that we're having dinner, I need to go quite a bit further. And that's my goal. Are there going to be
any vegan options? Oh, see, as soon as I just brought up vegan options, look who.
Oh God, don't remind me, those vegans. You know, we can learn a lot from vegans, but they're insufferable sometimes, man.
Oh, I hear you 100%, dude. Some of the most idiotic people on the planet, but at the same time, everybody's got rights and blah, blah, blah. And if you just always leave the most idiotic people be, then and never deal with them, then it's just real difficult to deal with anybody, I think. So I don't think you got to go deal with everybody, but at least being open to deal with the weirdest of people sometimes is like a vaccination. Am I allowed to say that on the internet anymore?
Yeah, you can say vaccine.
If you hang out with some weird people once in a while, then hanging out with weird people when you have to isn't alien. It isn't foreign to you, and you can have more in common with people. So yeah, I hear you. But I'm not trying to justify all the vegans that are out there. There are definitely some weird vegans, but there's just as many weird other people that eat whatever the hell they eat too.
Well, and there's some cool vegans too, and I think like there's a lot of cool vegans in philosophy. My master plan was like my master plan with when I got into like who's gonna have a Discord chat with Noam freaking Chomsky. That was crazy that was happening, and the fact that you know vegans
happen or you
just... I didn't. I found it. Like he's like what 90, right? And then like famous linguistic philosopher, right? Right, he wrote Manufactured Consent, right? All the crazy stuff, a whole bunch of other stuff that I haven't read. But the dude is well known and renowned, and I'm like, I can now check that off my bucket list. I was in a Discord chat with Noam Chomsky. That is the strangest thing anyone could ever say. But factor that in with you know, like the questions I wanted to ask him, because man, it would sure be cool to get a Noam Chomsky quote on self-defense, a Noam Chomsky quote on, you know, gun rights, right? Like that would be really cool to be able to get a soundbite of that or get a quote. So that way you can make it, that's on a recording, right? So then you can go and take that in. And unfortunately the vegans took all the time out of that chat, which was just unfortunate, which is why I resent the vegans now. The vegans interfered with my Second Amendment argumentation, and they must pay for this by giving me vegan philosophers that now give me quotes instead for the Second Amendment. So see, that's my master plan, is to get them all back.
It wouldn't be effective because there would just be some weird comment by somebody who may probably more than likely has no idea about the Second Amendment, right, or what the rights the Second Amendment protects. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That for all the things you just said there, that would have been interesting because I've seen that movie. I know who the guy is to some extent. I thought he was more of, I mean, you look at him as his skill set as the philosopher side. I just knew he did the controversial, I guess, news reporting of whatever was happening. Was it parallel to the Vietnam War or parallel to something? We were doing something, and I think that's what it was, like parallel to the Vietnam War. No, it was something else. Somebody was maybe it was parallel to the Afghanistan, something that we were saying was an atrocity, and I guess we were doing something horrible. And he was bringing light to that, and everybody hated him for showing the duplicity of something. So I thought that's what he was famous for. But you're obviously like the guy for that other stuff. So I could see what you're saying. Having the quote or whatever would have been cool. Just to hear his position would have been cool, I'm sure, for you. And then if he would have elaborated on it, that would have been even better. Or like that, somebody asked him a question, he just went on and on, or they asked him like 700 questions and they just allowed him to ask 700 different questions.
Yeah, one guy came up with, God, what was the hypothetical? It was like, would you eat human meat if that was all that was available in the grocery store or something? Like, it was like, would you be a cannibal if only human meat was in the grocery store or something crazy like that?
Yeah, that's veganist, because you can call that vegan all you want, but I don't know what you think. Like, depending on if you're a populationist or whatever, like if you feel that the world is going to become overpopulated, then you have to be concerned of how you feed the population. And so there's a lot of people that like eating barbecue that are going to be concerned that if you look at some of the ways say extrapolate future, whatever numbers and stuff, like you run out of real estate if you don't factor in other things. So basically that human meat thing is, when I hear it, I hear that is more of like, if we run out of real estate and we can't afford to have cow pastures and we have to eat each other or something, like, is that the future? Are we in a dire future where we're going to run out of
And it's just like, it's such a gotcha question because it's trying to get you to say like, yeah, no, eating human meat would be okay if you were desperate. And then the guy goes, see, Noam Chomsky supports cannibalism. And it was just this like gotcha question that went on for like 10, 20 minutes, whatever. And I wound up tracking down that guy in Discord and talking a little smack with him back and forth over it. But like the guy's a good guy. It's just he really wanted his soundbite. That was like, but his soundbite was this kind of like disingenuous question. So I didn't like that.
The question, the guy is like, I know he's old or whatever, but he's like, this was a one in a lifetime opportunity. The guy isn't going to be like, there's no chance the guy's going to be like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And people seem to like it. I'll keep doing that. It'll keep me young.
Yeah, like I don't know. And it would be hard for me to follow Chomsky's schedule to that level, I think. But what I do know is that there's plenty of other good philosophers out there. There's plenty of other renowned philosophers out there that maybe not with that level of like public recognition, but there's still plenty of other like credible philosophers. And like when we talk about like the Second Amendment, my biggest I have what my biggest concerns are from a philosophical angle in dealing with the Second Amendment, and they're entirely different, I think, than yours at a practical level, right? So, at a practical level, you're probably not too concerned with pacifists. At a philosophical level, I'm very concerned with them, and that's not because
I wouldn't say that I'm not concerned about it on more than one level, but
as far as an ideological threat, I guess. I'm very worried about them in a philosophical game, but I'm not worried about them in a practical way, right? I don't think that I think we would generally laugh off a pacifist and say, no, bad things happen to people. You're gonna have to deal with that, bud. So there's stuff like that. But then on the side of philosophy, it's well, if pacifist, if we should avoid violence, right now you have to justify why you can do violence to someone that's trying to hurt you. Right. And
no, I'm down with that completely because, I don't know if you remember, but my position has consistently been that self-defense is the weakest, lamest, laziest, poorest, least strategic argument we can come up with for Second Amendment. And I'm not yes, tyranny or whatever, but mainly I want Star Trek in the future, which is coming. And I want to have guns because nobody's afraid of them, so I can own whatever interesting gun I want or make or whatever because nobody's afraid of them, right? So we want a future of everyone is pacifist and not afraid of a thing that can cause harm. Otherwise, we're going to have pacifism in Nerf one level, single story Nerf planes, where you can't fall off of anything or fall into anything.
Yeah, and that's where there's the other arguments for 2A, which I think are important too, and that's where I've been trying to talk to people as well, because it's hey, look, the self-defense angle, so you need a tool for self-defense. That's pretty strong as long as people are willing to accept axioms of self-defense. But as soon as that's out the window, right, then you're going to need something different, and it would be better to have that before that happens.
Self-defense,
if someone says someone says yes, self-defense is ethical. Okay. And then now I can say, great, you and I agree that self-defense is ethical. If it's ethical, then it makes sense for me to have the tools to do that job, right? And the person says, yeah, I guess, yeah, it does. So, okay.
Well, a societal shift where everybody's well, if I kill this guy and they're the breadwinner for 6 people, then my potential 3 people here isn't worth that. So some sort of hive, what I would call a hive Borg sort of mindset, if that became overwhelming and then we started creating law based on that.
Yeah, and that would be a very utilitarian mindset, right? If this person kills me, it's actually going to be net higher utility than if I kill them. So it kind of sucks for me, I guess, but I have to let them kill me.
Oh no, dude. I've been listening to some stuff. Have you heard me complain or talk about the Mic Drop podcast with that SEAL guy who interviews people from different wars, basically different battles?
No.
So, have you heard of Mike?
No, I haven't.
His name is it isn't Mike Drop. I can't think of it for whatever reason. But anyway, it's a SEAL guy out of Texas, and he ran I knew him originally because he did rescue dogs, working dogs, military working dogs. He would rescue them or give them a way to retire without being put down. And then I think he started to get them in touch with their handlers or whatnot. So I first found out about him like that. And then he started doing a podcast. And then 2 years into the podcast, I started listening to it. And it's an amazing podcast. So he'll interview Delta, SEALs, I don't know, all kinds of different people, not just military, but a lot of these military people. And they'll talk about whatever for 3-4 hours sometimes, 2 hours plus for sure. Some 3 hours probably average. So just in-depth, great articles or interviews. Most of these people are also entrepreneurs. So he'll get into their, first off, he gets into their daily routines, which is interesting, consistently listening to all these high performance people's daily routines, listening to their childhoods and their kind of stories, and in depth, plenty of time. Talks about how they got to where they did their amazing shit, whatever amount of time it takes to talk about whatever amazing shit they might have been witness to or been part of. Then what they did to get out of and deal with it, usually their health or whatever kind of routine they're doing to stay, because these people are usually high performance, so they're running, got pretty decent physiques, so they're running them in all different kinds of ways. So that's interesting. And then, like I said, most of them are entrepreneurs after. So he gets into that. And in a little bit, depending on, where he's at, he's done, I think, 60 or 80. He's done quite a few at this point. He's develops as he goes on, and he starts to get more into some of the mental shit too, like some of the ways that they're dealing with, or what they went through, kind of shit, and how they dealt with it, or what, how they were affected 20 years later, kind of shit. Really, really good interviews. And then I've been listening to this guy because I already listened to all of those, and now they come out once a month or something, so I have to wait for the next one to come out all the time. I found another guy who's an Apache pilot, and he's been interviewing a bunch of people, and much shorter, only like an hour and a half, hour or something. But his is more focused on the person, where they come from, and then the specific battles, and really the battles, like whatever the thing is that they did that they're most known for. Maybe if they wrote a book or whatever, if they were involved in something, like how they dealt with it. And then he'll talk a bit more, it seems like, about their aftermath also, like dealing with how they're. And the thing is, actually, they don't even have to talk about it so much. It's just Delta, and everybody who's above Delta, or whatever you want to say, like at the different levels that are elite, then they're conditioning their heads as much as they're conditioning their arms and their trigger fingers. You know what I mean? Like they're giving them tools that let them cope, which they never have in the past. And when they talk about it, they're able to give you just amazing insight to, how to deal with stuff. So anyhow, how was I even going with all that? These interviews have been great, and they've been giving me insight into just way more interesting shit that to bring to 2A. And that, there's, I guess you were talking about philosophy. So I guess I was saying a lot of these things are, I guess, philosophy in the respect, like how to conceptualize, or how to get your mind out of some stuff, or how to recognize patterns or behaviors, right, and pull yourself out. That would be philosophy, or is that just psychology?
It can be a bit of both, right? And there's an area of philosophy, right? Philosophy of mind, that does talk a lot about how ideology is formed, and all kinds of stuff like that. So I think that's something where we can look at that and say, there's aspects of psychology there. There's also aspects of philosophy there, and sometimes they kind of cross streams. And is
philosophy the language we use, and the psychology is what's happening, or something, like the way to describe it? But philosophy is how we interact with it, or something.
Yeah, I think psychology, it's fair to say, is definitely more like scientific, right? It's more empirical. I would say philosophy of mind is more going to be not that the empirical stuff doesn't rely on arguments, but that the philosophy of mind isn't limited by, say, needing to use the scientific method to establish truth. So, like, in the same way that, like, what separates journalism from philosophy is, like, a journalist is looking at observations of the world and then coming up with, like, this is what's happening now in this kind of focused area. With philosophy, right, we can answer questions, but the way that I answer questions is through granting axioms. So you could say, hey, Walt, under what axioms would gun control be morally correct? And then I could give you a series of different, like, ethics systems, right, where gun control is now suddenly okay. And you can say, well, what about the systems where gun control is not acceptable or not moral? And I can give you a series of those, and basically saying, okay, well, presuming that we accept this system and presuming that this is true of the world, then I can build all the chain to get us here. Where it comes down to you is going to be kind of on, like, matters of personal belief. So I can say something like, yeah, if you think that agents, meaning like forces, cause things in the world, then the door for free will, right, if that's something you want to talk about, that door for free will could be open to you, where you can freely make decisions. If that's possible, if agents cause things. That's not possible if events cause things, that is, properties of the world at a given time, right? And so it can get really nebulous and nerdy, and we can go into, like, all the particulars, but basically, yeah.
Would that have to be either or is that just some clinical way of describing it?
That's another philosophical conundrum, right? Is it possible to have both agent and event causation, right? Okay. Now, like, my position is that I think events cause events. Like, I think that in order for us to get to this point in time, the previous point of time had to happen, To me, that makes sense. But even that's made on a series of axioms, right? Like, for me, events don't exist, they occur. And that's like a semantics difference, but it's important. Like, I wouldn't say that the Revolutionary War exists, right? Like, I would say the Revolutionary War occurred back in the day, and that's what gave America kind of its starting place. That was the point in time, but I wouldn't say that point in time like currently exists. It's like a weird thing for me to say. But different people have different perspectives on that type of stuff, and so depending on those axioms, they can lead you to dramatically different places. But my job is less to get you to accept an axiom for the most part. My job is to play out what happens if certain axioms are true. If that makes sense. So like I can tell you where this, like, picture an axiom as a seed. I'm going to tell you what plant that's going to grow into, assuming that's the seed you plant. My goal is to know what it would grow into, not to tell you to plant that seed.
So I guess, I don't know if this leads into this or not, but it was something that multiple times as you've described stuff, when you bring up philosophy and stuff, I wanted to ask you, so it's a better time to ask you than trying to do it in a text chat or whatever. But
Sure.
I've often seen where they'll say, I think they go physics. Wait, how does it work? You'll start with physics creates the place that chemistry can happen, and chemistry creates the thing that biology can happen in, and biology creates the thing that sociology or psych whatever, sociology can happen in, and then that creates where psychology can happen. So like is that a hierarchy or a whatever levels of science or what? So if that's the case, where is philosophy in there?
I think philosophy is the bedrock that enables every other discipline. So I think that you need philosophy in order to get to language, right? Or well, you kind of need language. You need like linguistics basically to be able to get anywhere. So like the way I see it is like linguistics, philosophy, math, and like logic itself, which logic is a branch in philosophy anyway. Mathematics presupposes logic, and then he introduces linguistic concepts. But like, like logic is kind of the start of everything. So like that very basic, like we have to have some logical syntax in order to make things make sense. That seems to be a baseline axiom that most people accept. The people that don't tend to accept that are philosophers, funny enough. But like you and I go like, yeah, no, logic, we have to take that for granted. Otherwise we have no logical existence. Like I can't make sense of the world without logic. My mind can't process things in an illogical way. Like so I would say that like philosophy is first, and then you'd get into math and language and shortly thereafter. But that's my opinion.
Logic is a logarithm, or like your interpretation of the logarithm that you're in or something, or the logarithm that your head uses or something, and then there's just another logarithm, right? Wouldn't that be the same thing, like an interpretation of a different completely different thing?
So I guess when I say logic, I don't necessarily mean like a logarithm. I don't mean like any kind of like a mathematic process. I just mean like
well, I guess I was using that as an example, but like you could have two different sets of math, like two different logarithms that were similar but had differences, and then they just worked the same way. But then that would not be how logic is. Like if you just have a different set of logic over here, it's like equal but different. That's what we say. It's just there, but it's just different.
It definitely, like, I'm going to give you the least satisfying answer. It definitely could be, but I'm not convinced that it is. I'm not convinced that it's not either. It could be like, so there is that argument that, hey, look, logic, like I could use different types of logic. So for instance, there's something called modal logic, which deals with necessary and possible worlds, right? So, are what's necessary and possible and what have you, so like possible worlds. And then we live here, we call this the actual world, right? The real world is the actual world, right? Let's say. So there's
like living on one side of a cube or something, like you think it's the side, but it's one of 6 sides, and you just don't know because you can't experience all 6 sides. So
so
against the wall or something, we all just think we're the only version.
Mm-hmm. So like basically like in the actual world, let's say I'm wearing a blue shirt tonight, right? Now it could have been in a possible world that I'm wearing a red shirt tonight, right? I could have worn a different shirt. And that's a possible world.
On the other side of that cube wearing a red shirt, except in a different virtual space,
right?
And same spatially, but yeah, there's like you're also wearing the red shirt, or like another branch went off of you wearing a red shirt.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that you can do there. So for me, I would call myself a modal fictionalist. I don't think that, like, the way that the axiom that I support is that me saying I could have had a red shirt is the reason that that's a true statement is the same reason that I can say Harry Potter is a wizard is a true statement. In this fiction, this hypothetical I've created, right? Now I can say something that's true of the hypothetical that's not true of the actual world, right? So that's how I take it. But I'm not the only take, and a lot of people have beef with my take. So some people may say, no, these possible worlds are real, they're just not actual. Some people would say that they're alternate universes, literally. Some people deny any semblance of possible worlds and think that it's ridiculous. But if you accept possible worlds and you find out that something's logically necessary in one possible world, there's an axiom that says, oh, well, I found out through, even in my view, through this modal fiction that something is necessary in the fiction. Well, if it's necessary there, that means it's just logically necessary, period. Meaning that it's not contingent. It's not like it's not based on something. It's by itself. It's just logically necessary. So that means that if it's necessary in the possible world, that goes all the way to the actual world. So I can actually investigate the world through fiction this way, which is crazy.
No, but doesn't that apply that if you called that physics and then just had a different physics, or if you called that math, like a base 10 and you had a base 12, like, couldn't you just say, okay, if you say that, then why can't you pick it up and make it base 16, make it fundamentally different but similar?
Yeah, and that's where we could say, okay, well, we have math this way in the actual world, right? But does math operate this way, does math operate in a necessary way? So like with us using base 10, is there any reason why I couldn't use base 12? And if there is, then that system of mathematics is contingent and not necessary. And that would tell us a whole lot about mathematics. Namely that
suggesting that there was some logic that went through, whatever the theory is of multiple versions of stuff or whatever, but that, you were saying that there was some consistent logic going through it that would ring true.
Yeah, if it basically, yes. Yeah. So like a necessary claim is going to be a claim that that is logically necessitated. So like, for instance, P or not P is a tautology, right? So like it either the thing is or is not, right? It can't, there's not like a quasi for it exists, it's true or whatever, right? It's either true or false, right? That is if we've accepted that things are either true or false. So if that's the case and you're good with saying, no, things are either true or false, then if I say, okay, the sky is blue, that's either a true or false claim. Now, if the sky must be blue, either by definition or through logical necessity, or because whatever causes the sky to be blue is necessary, and so the sky is always blue because it was driven by something else. Basically, if I can prove that in a possible world, that would mean that the sky is would always be blue in the actual world. And that's through an axiom called S5. And this gets trippy, and it would probably be about a 2-hour lesson for me, but the longest short story is like, yeah, there are some people that just straight up reject that line of argumentation altogether. More or less, to get back to the point, you can reject certain types of logic. So some people reject modal logic. Some people reject what they might call higher order logics or whatever. Some people reject metaphysics entirely, which is strange, but like they're just like, no, I don't care. It's all stupid. And yeah, you can take a whole bunch of different, perspectives and then try to do something with them. But people have different takes, and we can work within those takes. So if someone denies something or says, oh, this isn't true, then we can try to reason it out. And this is where we come to like some of those greater truths. So like if rejecting an axiom leads you to weird contradictory positions that you can't justify, or if rejecting the axiom forces you to accept the axiom, right? Then in those cases, then we kind of figure out that we really need that axiom. So more or less, yeah, that's where the dirty work is done with philosophy. It's really abstract, but basically, like, to boil it all back down, my goal would be to prove that self-defense is something that we need at all times. It never goes away. It doesn't go away in Star Trek future. It doesn't go away if everyone's pretty and wonderful and beautiful and does everything the government tells them to do. It doesn't go away if everyone's behaving well. Self-defense is always going to be something that needs to be protected. That's kind of my current route to go with the argumentation. But it may be that under certain axioms that falls apart, and that's true. But that's any argument. So I know I threw out a lot there, but if a little bit of that makes sense, I'll call it a win.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I'm sure there's still 11 people. They're not saying anything, but I don't know how hard they're listening or what. I've just been watching some interesting stuff on physics and whatnot. And yeah, what you're talking about there, at least from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it either parallels or is really freaking close to being the way that they explain different things, like different universes or different maths or different base tens, whatever base units or whatever that's called, counting sets or whatever that's called. And that's why it's interesting because it's just like learning the circuitry. It lets you learn programming. Not that it's not like a shortcut. It just lets you learn programming in a different way when you know a little bit more about the physical way the machine runs, right? So by learning about philosophy in this case, I guess, at least as I'm assuming you suspect, or that's one of the reasons I'm guessing you suspect there's value in it, is that it's sort of like one of the building blocks or one of the basic tools for describing so many things that if we apply 2A to it, we get potentially some really fundamental angles or some fundamental skills or tools or whatever we want to call resources, I guess.
Precisely. Yep.
That are just super strong and impossible, basically. If you've got something that's fundamentally applicable, just, they can come up with lies, I guess, but it's going to be really difficult for someone to, at least they'd have to they'd have to put an equal amount of work and do some sort of flip-flops more than likely to come up with some way to give any kind of argument to it, unless they just ignore it, I guess.
Yeah, like just as an example, right? I think Yankee Marshall accepted the law of the jungle, as he would call it, and not in my debate, but in a debate that followed the first one I had with him. And he said something to the effect of, I don't believe in natural rights, I believe in the natural law. So that's interesting. So it's like, okay, well, the natural rights are saying that you have certain rights because the circumstances of nature are such that you need them. So like if an animal doesn't have like any kind of right to defend itself, right, then how can it properly act out in a system of eat or be eaten, right? So that would be like a very natural argument. So Yankee's rejecting the second half of that. He kind of just argued it by assertion. He wasn't really pressed on that point. I'm not blaming him for that. Just wasn't really the contention. But yeah, in that context, right, it's like, okay, well, he rejects, if he's going to reject at least some portions of the natural law / natural rights argument. So, well, if he rejects that, then my whole self-defense goes out the window to Yankee, right? So I need a different angle for that person, right? So he's on a different page with different axioms than me. So I have to just address that. He's a different worldview, right? So it's what it is. But that's the type of thing that I'm trying to get to, is like we have to account for those. But what I'd like to do is start with some basic axioms that are really common and popular, and then move into different axioms and see if we can identify, hey, this is where, yeah, like unless you accept this. Because like the gun control argument of like guns kill people, when people are saying, no, guns are the cause of death, right? I have to say, well, now you're committed to event causation. Now you're committed to determinism. Now there's no reason for you to do anything about guns because you're just going to do whatever you're going to do anyway. Like you don't have a control. Now you lose concepts of like you're self-existing, right? And so it's like I can go into all these weird things and they're like, no, I exist. No, I can make choices. No, I can do right. And now they can't like say guns kill people anymore. Otherwise, they abandon all these other things in their ideology.
Well, it's not like you kind of play a weird game of chess, like you just kind of described it there. But like at the beginning there, when you offer a position that at first glance isn't what they're expecting and it's valid, right? It's going to give them a pause, and then potentially, because you're never going to get anybody in an actual confrontation to be like, oh, you're right, I just changed my position 180, right? Like you're giving them real life reasons to pause and then to go learn, and then giving the people who are on the pro side, who are on the right side, new stuff to sink their teeth into, to give those people who go to research something to find, right? To create content that evolves and isn't just repetitive, whatever the NRA said in the 1980s or whatever, again, or in a different typeface or whatever. Instead it's going to be addressing these new elements. So I dig what you're going, whatever, like you're describing, I guess, what your project is going to attempt to do. So my question is, going back to the Gun 2.0, you described that guy or from what you've seen of that guy's description of his project, and from my understanding, he's going to be writing a book. He does do a blog, and then there's some other content like an Instagram feed and something on Facebook probably. So that's more like timeline type of here's the post type of shit, trickle updates or that kind of thing. So from that guy's thing, what you said, what you're doing in your project, does that have anything to do with what he's doing? Is it like anywhere near? Does it cross at all? Is it like just what he's doing in a different version, or is it just completely different? Does it help his? Does it amplify his?
Yeah, so we're kind of, I would see my project as a distant, disabled sibling of his at the level that he's able to play now. I won't be able to play at that level truly for a while, just because of credentials and time to establish my thought patterns. But he's playing the sociology angle. So really where he's going to shine is in making statements of what is the case, right? So he's going to be looking at what's currently going on.
The study of society.
Right. Yeah. So basically like the studies of like society and human cultures and stuff. Right. So like, this is what Americans are doing. This, and his questions right now are centered around like, this is how Americans see guns, and this is how Americans are approaching firearms. This is why they're using them. This is how they see that. My job is to say
he's doing is in society, or from a society point of view, as a sociologist, you're wanting to do something similar, parallel-ish, but from the point of view of a philosopher with philosophy, right. Is the notes and the music.
Yeah. So what he's doing is what we'd call descriptive, right? So he can tell you what the American people think about guns, and he's going to be the expert on that. My goal is to be the expert on what they ought to do about guns, if that makes sense. So he's answering the is question, I'm answering the ought. And in philosophy and ethics, we have something called the is-ought gap. So I can't reason that because something is the case, we must do something without bridging a gap. If I say you have $1,000 in your bank account, therefore you ought to pay rent, I can't do that. I have to say something to the effect of, you should pay your bills. You have $1,000 in your bank account. Because you have $1,000 in your bank account and you should pay your bills, you should pay rent. Therefore, you should pay your rent, right? Or whatever. So I have to construct that argument to bridge the gap between is and ought. He's working that is side. I'm working the ought side. My job is also to build that bridge there between us, so that now it's not just cool Americans see guns in these ways. Now it's like they see guns in these ways, so we should do something about it. Right. So we should embrace what the people want, so that we should, whatever. But yeah, my job is to take what he's finding to be true and then extrapolate that out into what we ought to do moving forward. That's more or less my goal here. And then people to disagree and hash it out with me and bang it out and critique, but that's to move the discipline forward with philosophy. So even if like someone comes with the critique of, I like your critique a lot of my position. Like, I really like that point of, wait a second, what if self-defense isn't the best angle? Well, like, that's a really good critique.
Well, it can't be the best angle, because self-defense, what if there is going to be a technology that prevents self-defense?
Yeah. So like, that's, and that's
self-defense, there's going to be the best taser or the mousetrap thing or whatever the hell it's going to be, it's going to prevent violence, and then we don't need guns.
Yeah, like if we had, Nerf guns that instantly sedated an attacker, right? Yeah, so you didn't need firearms anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
and then the people are going to be like, well, what do we need guns for? We don't need them for defense. That's barbaric. And then we're like, oh, shit. Especially when the industry was like, oh, we make his self-defense guns. Like, oh, shit.
And I think that's where people typically fall back to property rights, but I'll see it on the self-defense side of the argument. Yeah, like that would be a winning argument, right? If we no longer technologically needed guns, then there doesn't seem to be a reason, like for self-defense anyway, then it doesn't seem that you would need them as an aspect of your right to defend yourself, unless you want to contend some more fringe positions, like you could defend yourself with whatever you want. So like, can I defend my home with a nuclear weapon? Right, like against a home invader, can I drop an atom bomb on them? Right, and like, why can't I do that? Well, because it's disproportionate, because it's overly harmful, because you didn't need to. You had the easier ways to deal with that problem, and you didn't take them. Right, so like, yeah, that line of questioning becomes open from your position, and it's a good critique. That's why I like it a lot, and that's something that I'll have to deal with on my side. So I don't know
when we go self-defense, we always have like, oh, we need to work together. It's like, not that people aren't working together, it's just that we're not thinking about each other. So when you've got somebody, I don't know, let's just pick somebody who, I know people that buy guns 10 at a time for an investment because for some reason, they've invested in a lot of stuff and guns is one of the things. They buy gold bars, they buy refrigerators, whatever it is, they decide they buy guns, right? Like, so coming at them with self-defense, they might be against self-defense or something like that. We're just not reaching everybody if we're focused on one specific thing. And the thing is, I don't even know how important, we aren't living in a time of more, well, I guess for a long time, it might be different technically right now, but for a long time, we weren't living in a time of more violence. We definitely live in a time of perceived violence and attention focused on the violence that is, but whether or not that's a massive trend, that's the part where we play into the ambush of the other side. The other side says, oh, you should be scared of each other, and because of that, we shouldn't have guns. And we're like, oh no, we should be afraid of each other, but because of that, we should have guns. And we don't question, why the fuck are we afraid of each other? There's no reason to be afraid of each other, and we're not afraid of each other. That's a whole perception being created. But anyway, that's one of my other things is that we get all too fixated about self-defense. What the hell? Who are all these, all this bullshit about millions of self-defense uses you guys all rage about Kleck's thing or whatever? It's that's one of those things. It's it sucks that so many people use that as their thing to cite, because it's created a thing of kickback, right? Where y'all are like, oh no, that thing wasn't good, and now I hear it all the damn time, so now I'm enraged about it. I'm going to talk about it. So you know what I'm saying. But same if Tiller's 21-foot rule. If all of a sudden somebody was like, oh, it should have been 23-foot, dumbass Tuller, and there'd be a kickback,
Yeah,
but
and that's stuff that we've seen too. I've seen police departments go and say, oh, it's actually 25, or oh, it's actually or oh, it's actually 30, and I've seen that actually play out.
Oh, definitely. But they never say Tuller's an asshole. They were all like, thanks, Tuller, getting us to think about this, but it was actually.
Well, and that's the point of philosophy too. My point is hey, I can explore the self-defense argument. I can sincerely believe the self-defense argument, but I can also take it from a position where I can get the self-defense argument to a point where someone gives me the critique of this falls apart if you don't need the guns for self-defense anymore. And I can say, yeah, I see that point. So that doesn't invalidate the other arguments. It wouldn't invalidate, say, a property rights argument. It wouldn't invalidate a whole bunch of other arguments. But yeah, that's something where now you do have to think.
As long as it's not fucking sticking something else in the eye with a stick, who cares?
Yeah.
The advice of don't skate on thin ice. So what if it's summer? That's still good advice. It's just not applicable at the moment, but it's still advice that we don't want to forget. And it's certainly important at certain times.
Yeah. So it's just about acknowledging those limitations.
And that's why I like guns so much, because that's the thing, is the big awakening or the big switch or the big flip will be when everybody just gets chill with each other and isn't scared of each other. Because once we're not scared of each other, then it's not like guns are even an issue. Because then it's oh, you still want guns? All right, well, just the same way that it's going to be oh, you still want a Mustang that uses gas? All right, well, because right now there's people that have cars that use lead in their gas, right? I forget when it was. I was in college whenever you pretty much couldn't buy lead anymore. It was tougher and tougher. So I had a car at the time on El Camino. And I remember going to a place and paying $300 to make it, because I was in school. I wasn't going to just do it. It was too difficult. You had to change valves or something. I paid $300 to make it so that my car would take unleaded, so I could finally buy gas decent and have to look all over for gas. You know what I mean? But there's still people that have gas in their, regular old-fashioned gas cars, like a Model T or some old-ass car, right? That didn't change over. And people might not, they'd probably be you're an asshole if they were zooming up and down their street or something, killing their roses with it. But for the most part, nobody gives a shit about that car. And that's how I want it to be with guns in the future, I guess, is my thing. So I don't want it to be oh, you can have cars as long as they're an ambulance, or you can have cars as long as it's an ambulance and you need it in an emergency. I want it to be leave us alone. We're not driving our fucking ambulance up and down your thing. So I want to have a Mustang, or I want to have a motorcycle, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's where I think maybe approaching arguments on how we deal with risk in our as a matter of law, and how we deal with approaching the public good versus the individual and stuff like that. That's where those arguments may pan out stronger ultimately for your specifically your end position. I know that I'm pretty in the 2.0 camp of like this is about self-defense and resistance to tyranny and right to revolution and that type of thing. So like on my end,
I'm not against all that. I
and
just don't.
and I'm not saying you are.
They're only positions. I don't even care if that's our first positions for now, as long as we're fluid and we understand that you can put something else in front when necessary and that there's other tools. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, and so just with that, it's like, yeah, so my burden on my side with the arguments is going to be more focused on like the reality of self-defense and in that. However, yeah, for defending guns specifically, yeah, like property rights, how people approach risk as it pertains to the property rights of others, things like that. Those would be the angles of philosophy to defend. Like, say, if I was arguing specifically out of your paradigm, that would be where I'm looking, because that would provide the most like support for your position, right? And that's something that
in today, and I'm thinking we're not even putting into like we got a situation where when I was a kid, we had the first time ever, I think, or whatever, we had Reagan, and it was like, oh, we have a actor as president. That's, oh my gosh, like that's, oh my goodness, like we've never done anything like this before. And then every once in a while, there's somebody who's like, oh my gosh, right? So like we've still got big changes happening. So we just had it go from, I mean, I don't have to explain to everybody, we just went from Trump to this guy. That was a pretty, I mean, whiplash effect, right, as far as politics and stuff. And at the same time that happened, and probably as a result or consequence of that, or it's probably related in one way than one, I guess, is I always keep saying my grandparents or my parents just handed a baton to probably you or your kids, probably you. So your generation, when were you born, in 2000?
No, I was born in 90s.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying? Like the kids that were born in the 2000s to they're like 18 and taking their first election. I don't know if that's a different generation than you. I don't really know. I'm in a fucked up generation, so I don't really pay attention to them all. But I know that, you know, like a big generation just handed the baton to another big generation. And with that, you know, everything that I don't have to bring up, right? All the differences in their mindsets and what. So I just know that the difference going forward is tremendous. And they just had this whiplash type of shit. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm not saying it is happening, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw distrust in elected officials and the insistence on the removal of laws. I've said it in shit. Like I say, I just get kind of frustrated after saying these things over and over, but I remember back in 2015 saying, you know, it's not unheard of to see a trend or a fad in elected officials removing stuff like the washing donkeys on Sunday laws or like shit like that, because it's cool to remove laws. And, you know, we might get to a point, or we probably would eventually get the pendulum switched or whatever the words would be, you know, to get it to where people are demanding that the people that get who get elected do that. And then we see much smaller governments, and then, you know, things get scrutinized and responsibility. And once you get a few politicians held responsible for what the craziness they're doing, they're going to get out of there like cockroaches or something, right, in the light. And that's all it would take, right? We see pendulum swings when it gets to that, is what the end of the pole, whatever the end of the pendulum is, right? I keep saying, you know, we go through cycles and you get to the top of the wave, whatever, it kind of hovers there for a second and then it goes the other way really freaking quick because it's a 180. So anyway, I could just see us having a different change. And in that future where our focus isn't on the stuff that we're focused on today, that's where I just say, you know, there's going to be a potential for a big difference. And I just say that because we've seen already. I was kind of alluding to it before, you know, the attack on us to just own guns in general, and then who should own the city, or I mean the national or the state, and then you have them for hunting, you know, where should you be hunting? And then, you know, as technology changed and other stuff factors, you know, like, you know, we've had these different waves and different attacks, and then with those successes and failures, we kind of had traditions and established, I guess, positions get established. And then, unfortunately, I think we saw cycles happen there and some ping pong getting played where the antis would keep doing this and the quote unquote pros would, you know, do this. And then, hey, that made us both money. What if we did that again? And what if we just kept doing that? And now we just get louder and louder doing this and nobody's really complaining. So, you know, we're just going to keep doing this. And again, the same way, Pendulum Swift. Everybody's getting sick of that shit. We're seeing, the NRA fall, and nobody can do nothing about that. I mean, that's happening. Most people aren't paying that attention to that, but that's significant. So I can see the indications that this isn't on an endless trend in a straight line trajectory to someplace. We're seeing potentially the beginnings of a massive turnaround to something else. But who knows? It's easier to observe than pinpointed. What's this? A major bummer is I see keeping 2A bullies from scaring off all the newbies. Be more welcoming to people you don't know and don't berate them on their politics. It's a tough one for sure, because I just recently discovered after trying to, I do listen to the liberal gun owner stuff because I appreciate insight and whatnot. I get frustrated when I find out that their goals are not to really share as much as just to create places for the liberal gun owners and whatnot. But you can still glean if you're willing to listen to them, even though they're not really talking to you. You can get information from them, and I forget where it was. I think it might have been talking to Walt. Somebody was saying that, was it talking to you, that they said they went into, or you were telling me about somebody who went into a store and saw an American flag with a line on it? I forget if it was
I didn't talk about the line.
Somebody went in and saw a store. Maybe they went to a gun show or saw a flag with a line on it and was offended. And I'm like, dude, I'm offended by that, but I'm not offended to where I think they're hurting me. I just get offended because I think they're assholes. But I can't tell somebody what the fuck to be offended by. And I was, you think about it, like Nazi shit. Like I get offended by Nazi shit when I see somebody being Nazi-ish about it, but I don't get offended when I see a guy who I know killed that Nazi. I'm like, all right, I know why that guy has a Nazi thing, So if I see a guy from the 45th Infantry Division, who's fucking old as hell from World War I or something, have a Nazi thing on his arm, I don't think he's a biker. You know what I mean? I know that that's his division logo before fucking Hitler used it, and he just didn't take it off yet, or he didn't die yet. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? There's you can't know if people are going to get offended around or whatever. So when you say 2A bullies from scaring off the newbies, I get scared because I know I'm scaring people off unintentionally. Now I'm definitely not trying to be abrasive because there's some people I don't like that are preying off of the newbies, but and I'm sure I'm considered a bully because the first thing that happens when somebody's exploiting other people is when they get illustrated, light shined on them, they start saying that they're getting harassed, or they say, "Oh, we should all work together."
No, I don't think you're a bully. I think I think you're older, and I think you're kind of I think as you get older, you kind of get set in your ways. I don't mean that to be you're stubborn or incapable of changing anything, but just you have your way of doing things, and you've lived your life with that way of doing things. That's not bad or wrong. It's just how it is. I'm going to be that way when I'm that old,
yeah, exactly. You just see things happen so many times,
right?
You're used to it, and you're just like, well, that's the way I do it. So
right, you kind of cement in an approach. But yeah, on that note, I think there's a lot of it that is tone and cultural differences as well. So between generations. Because I see
you can't know. You just can't know what your grandparents knew. And the same way your grandparents are like, how can you be offended by that? Well, what the fuck? I didn't grow up I listen to people complain about getting whatever the kids are like today, or the kids I don't know what my grandparents were like. I know that they got the hell beat out of them. I know my grandpa hated his dad because he got beat all the damn time. Beat. You know what I mean? So I don't know what that life was like. How could we be the same? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's where I'm if you watch the Queer Armor interview, that was my whole point about that, right? Is that hey, look, it's someone who's willing to work past the language, work past the culture to meet people where they are, and we need more people like that, just period, in our society, whether it's on the Second Amendment or not. We just need more people, more Americans like that, because if I got hung up every time, G said something where that didn't mesh perfectly with my interpretation, and I didn't ask for clarification, or I didn't sit there and be okay, yeah, let's flush this out, let's communicate. And if G did the same thing to me, we wouldn't be able to have a conversation that lasts 3 hours, right? We'd be stuck in
constantly,
right? And it's the same thing with the gun stores and the flags. So I've talked about Confederate flags and getting them out of gun stores. The reason that I want them out is that I know for my generation, overwhelmingly, I think my age group, my demographic, right, is looking at that and seeing this, it sees the Confederate flag as a hate symbol. I can say that and say at the same time that a lot of people in older generations, and some people in mine too, right, to be fair, look at the Confederate flag and see it as just like a Southern pride thing, like a patriotism thing for their state or for their culture or their heritage. They don't look at it and see some racist thing. They're not necessarily racist people themselves. Like they respect people and treat them equally, right? And so it's like, you know, I'm trying to say, hey, look, what you're saying is communicating something other than what you mean it to communicate. And that gets in the way. And so on my end, yeah, it does upset me. But it's not something where I think that you're a bad person because you did it. It's just, it's something that I wish that you didn't do. And that's entirely different, right? So I think it's like being able to have that nuanced conversation of being like, hey, look, I know you mean well, but when other people see this, it looks like this. Even though you totally mean well when you use it, and being able to divorce that and have that conversation and have people make up their own minds. Like, yeah, if you want to make money moving forward, right, in industry, like, my advice would be for anyone trying to make money to make sure that they have the future generation on the hook at the right time. In other words, it makes sense to advertise, like if you're selling homes and the demographic that's buying homes is 35 plus, right? Then you should be marketing the 35 plus. But at a certain point, you're going to have to transition to those people who were once 25 because their values are different than that group. So over time, right, we're going to see industries probably do some more things that are focused on inclusivity because their target markets demand it. As the markets shift, eventually there's going to be those points where, yeah, they can't just, say American made until the cows come home anymore. Like they have to actually come out and hit the inclusivity notes. But then they hit the inclusivity notes, they'll start selling like hotcakes. If they do that at the wrong time, we get tropes like get woke, go broke, right? So it's something where we have to pay attention to who's coming in, who's going to be the leading demographic in what area, whether that's the industry, whether that's the culture, whether that's the voting block, right? We have to look at all that, see what their values are, and meet them where they're at. See, that's a big takeaway.
Because that's something else that I guess I could have asked, and I'll act like I would have. For everybody who's not listened to the whole show, this is what I asked earlier, and Walt just never answered it. But that's what I could have asked about the gun culture 2.0, because that kind of metric or whatever is objective, I guess, based on when you start paying attention, I guess, or is that the way to say it? Like, when you start the clock, because again, I think that's a cycle. The way you describe that is a cycle thing. It's happened over and over.
Yeah, like there had to have been some ad that you saw in your childhood that made a lot of sense to your parents that you thought was dumb, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Like, and same thing for me, right? So at a certain point, right, the ads start to look really dumb to your parents, but look really good to you, right? And that's just because you have different values. You're part of a different culture. You understand it differently.
Well, and the thing is, too, the cycle, I think, is changing. Like with 3D printing and with eventually we're going to have something like a replicator. You're going to go to a place that has a bigger 3D printer than you want to buy because you want exactly what you want out of a 3D printer. You know what I mean? Like, and then that'll evolve into we have microwave replicators or something. It hovers to us exactly. You know what I mean? Like we're moving further and further away from what is it is the parameters that gave the past generations their reality. Like these are the things factors that you have to deal with. You have to go to a store to buy stuff. There's finite resources. You hate the communists, go. And that's what, we came up with this whole set of society. Well, it ain't like that going forward. So not only, like I was saying, I think I was trying to say that, like, if your perception of, you were talking about a Confederate flag. Dude, I can't tell you. I mean, I'm 50 fucking years old. Somebody's asking when was I born? I'm 50 now, right? So I'm 50 fucking years old. And I'm not like a lot of people. I literally grew up with guns. And I guess we were safe. Like we weren't unsafe. I wasn't like a Yahoo or whatever. I always had toy guns. I knew my real guns from my toy guns. I always had real guns or whatever. I've talked about this. They were locked up because we didn't want people to steal them. But, I knew the combination or whatever you want to say, whether the keys were. And I was just assumed to be responsible, just like I had a bike and I was assumed I wasn't going to go drive off into the highway or whatever. So it's just a different time or whatever. So, damn it, I got off track because Garrett gave me another $10. Thanks for that. Oh, you were talking about the rebel flag. All that time, I guess I'm saying about how old I am and how long I've been into guns. I mean, again, all I can remember from being a little kid, like I remember going to a couple of parades. I remember going to gun shops. I just dug gun shops. My dad was a total gun nerd and there was no internet. So he would go to a gun shop and I would be there for hours. So you either, when you're that kid, you either love gun shops or you fucking hate them, right? And I'm the opposite. I loved them. So he would be in there for hours and I would just dig through boxes of shit. Like I didn't know what I was looking at, but it was all awesome. Can you imagine when I would dig through gun shops in the 70s, I guess, the late 70s, the kind of shit that was coming in out of the surplus stores and shit? I know I held grenades. I know I held grenades in my life. You know what I'm saying? And not the ones that they gave me in the army. My uncle gave me. So anyway, I'm just saying there was like crazy cool shit at gun shows and gun shops and stuff. And I'm talking like, World War I, something that was probably, old enough that nobody gave a shit anymore, or something from like the Civil War, that kind of stuff. I'm not talking like some perception that there's like a back room of gun stores where you can get live grenades. I'm talking just old Civil War, like relics that were just so old nobody cared that they were in the bottom of a drawer. Anyhow, so I'm that old, and all that time, if I would have ever seen a rebel flag, I would have thought it was Dukes of Hazzard, dude. This TV show with the car. I've never seen anybody give a shit, and I've never lived in the South though. I mean, I live in Arizona, and this is as an adult. So I've always lived in the North. I've only ever seen them on maybe on a flagpole. So maybe if I seen them, I figured, oh, that's for if they're going to take their Civil War guns out, and they put that flag up, and they put the other flag up, and then they put their two guns out, and that's the Civil War display. But it wasn't ever like, yeehaw, this is dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, and all that shit. Like all my life, dude, all my whole life. I can't even say I've ever I guess I wouldn't know what I was looking at if there was some sort of weird, what are we talking, like South wins the war type of weird Civil War shit. I wouldn't even know if there's other, except for that flag. I don't know what other Civil War stuff looks like. I remember money back in the day. When I was a little kid, the giant Civil War money, both sides had giant money. Because that was everywhere. Like everyone was just giving you that. And, at some point it dried up. That was about the only other Civil War thing I remember. But anyway. So anyway, I think we're talking about generational differences and whatnot. So yeah, I can't just even imagine. And then the thing is, like, a movie can be like pivotal to a whole bunch of people. So if y'all see a movie that I've never seen, and in that movie, whatever, SpongeBob does something that everybody now has some special significance with SpongeBob, and you know what I mean? Like, how the hell would I know, or anybody I know who's never seen that movie? It's like Star Wars. I'm sure our parents were like, I don't know, our kids are idiots. They think Star Wars is church or something, like stupid. And it clicked on all of us at some sort of weird level, and I'm sure y'all just get sick of it because there's like 1,000 Star Wars. Why would they care about this one time when one Star Wars came?
Yeah, like even on our end, right? Like just with like the technology we use to communicate now, like it's probably not a weird day for you. And I'm making a huge stereotypical like generalization here, but I'm imagining for you, it wouldn't be a big deal to have a day where you're just relaxing and listening to the radio, right? And on our end, like, we've had like pretty much from when I was at that transition. I still remember what the internet sounds like. Like I was born in 91. So, but 2-3 years later, that kind of went away, right? Everyone started getting like the non-dial-up stuff, like, your cable and your fiber optic and your this and that and your DSL and, whatever. And so, yeah, like for me, a day of just listening to the radio is really strange because I'm actively controlling the media I'm consuming for all kinds of reasons that are very personal, and I don't explain to anyone.
To like something that someone else is orchestrating what order you're listening to, or
right.
What you're listening to.
Yeah, like the idea of spending my day listening to the radio is so strange to me now. But that was something where when I was a kid, the radio or like, right, obviously, in the 90s, like color television, right? Like those two things, having that was much more normal. And you would expect like, yeah, no, that would be a day of just like being able to, spend a day in front of the TV or in front of a radio while you're, working on something or whatever was cool. Now it's like I have my phones. I can listen to whatever podcast I want, whatever YouTube show I want, throw it in my pocket, put my headphones in, be good to go. I control every song. Like if I get tired of a song midway through, I can change it. Like whatever, if I'm tired or bored of someone talking, I can change it. And those things weren't anywhere near as like the selection power wasn't as powerful when all you could do is change the channel or turn the dial. So like how we approach that. And also like, like it would be really common to spend a day reading a newspaper or to spend the morning reading a newspaper, like at least glancing the headlines and stuff. Now, like we don't do that now. Like our news is whatever people think is important on our feeds that populates, it's greatly streamlined our experience in some ways. And it's not that that's better. It's just different.
The way that's interesting that you describe it there, because at the same time that element of that perspective of the change, when there was, like, let's say whatever one you just picked there, the newspaper or the radio was more the norm, that also means there was infinitely less options. There was like 3 options of what news you were listening to, unless you were like able to go to a city newsstand and get some weird other thing. You got one of 3 papers ever in the whole country, or maybe the local version, which was regurgitation of one of the 3, right? Because they all came from syndicated news sources, at least when I was a kid. So I'm sure that changed throughout the time of newspapers. But you know what I'm saying? By the time you could pick what you wanted, you also could pick what you wanted, which is a whole different thing. And I think about stuff sometimes like that, but I don't think I've ever thought about it that way. That I definitely have experienced even when you decided to listen to news, you had to listen to one of 3 fucking voices, period. And there's people that have never even considered. Can you even imagine what that was like? There's no way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see that kind of vestigially because like a lot of local news networks are owned by conglomerates now, right? But not anything.
You can restrict yourself to the talking heads, like not
right.
Period.
Yeah, like now news is independent. Now you go on YouTube or you go find a website that just reports on news in a way that you like, and you can just do that. Like now you can go to all sides, right, and see like 3 competing headlines from different, like from like a left-wing source, a right-wing source, and a centrist source. Like you have so many tools now to approach news with. It's crazy. Yeah, it's a completely different world. I agree.
And you find people that have a similar awareness and shit, which is neat, right? But I guess I was going to say the double-edged sword of all that is that you now, like right now, I'm eating a healthy snack of dark chocolate. Like once you can eat anything you want and you decide to only eat dark chocolate, you die pretty quick. So like it wasn't ideal to get your news from only one source, but since I knew it was coming from only one source, I actively sought out everything I could possibly find that was not, that was an alternative to that source. And then I held skeptical anything that was a direct opposite, argument or was too flashy or produced, because we knew what propaganda was and what was possible at the time, publishing or versions of the internet, we knew what to be aware of and stuff. So we saw that was changing and yeah, it's interesting. I never actually thought about that angle on it, but yeah, that's a whole nother element. And then again, when you can bring people together and have things like the Reddit, which again, double-edged sword, brings so many people together with ideas, it's tough for bad ideas to fester too long, I would hope, over there, right? Like there can be branches that kind of suck, but they're strong, right? They're like, they've got to be valid, I would think. So, it's going to eliminate a lot of the, I don't want to say it's eliminate, at least it'll allow people with good ideas to gather and make way more effective use of their resources. And then at the same time, a couple of bad things will happen. But I would suspect overall, just people in general make more positive shit. So can't say that it'll prevent the bad stuff, but I'm guessing, well, there must not be that much negative stuff. Otherwise, we'd see evil people taking over the world because Reddit, allowed them to or whatever. Right?
Yeah, and and it's interesting because it's like I think it just streamlines the issues that people want to talk about, but I think people are also approaching news from that perspective now, as opposed to back in the day. I think when journalism was more known for, like, journalists were known for integrity and that was the metric, right? And now it's about the talk time.
You didn't achieve a level of elite journalisticness if you didn't have that authenticity and whatever, right? So people could default to like, well, they must be good because they're there, so we'll default to them, not in our ballpark anymore. Now everybody's skeptical of everything, so you have to take whatever level you're going to put your awareness to and then do it, figure it out.
Yeah.
That makes you stronger. It makes us all more able, but it can also make us a bit callous, I suppose. I don't know, probably susceptible. Nothing's perfect, but certainly.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's just like understanding that, you know, just because the content changed, it doesn't mean that the totality of the game changed, right? To that point. And seeing like, yeah, like I think we can say, you know, in the sense, I guess when I use Streamline in that sense, I guess I have to kind of walk that back to be a sense of the stuff people are talking about the most is presented in front of me instantly. I know what's important to other people because it's been made that way. But then there's also the caveats that come with that, right? Like that's a huge thing. It means that, yeah, we can absolutely manufacture what's important to people by making it appear as though it's trending. And that's a crazy world to live in, knowing that that's happening and knowing that regardless of if it's manufactured or if it's genuine, it can be made important by people with that kind of power. And that's pretty crazy. But that's a reality now with media.
But because it's we're aware of it, I think we've got just as much potential to be, to walk aside from, let it, not fall into that trap. Have you seen the blockchain social platforms?
Yeah, actually, I had a viewer of mine who wanted to take me on to what was it, ThreeSpeak. And so I let him start posting my videos there, and I said he could keep my revenue from it. But
I don't know about the revenue, but blockchain meaning like can't be taken down the same way that blockchain works, like that technology or whatever.
Yeah,
so building a platform in a blockchain. Well, basically the one I've seen is Minds, and it looks very much like Gun Channels was. So basically, I built DIY content platform, so you can make it look like a real estate place, you can make it look like Craigslist, you can make it look like YouTube. It's just like a framework, so it's very usable. It looks like I couldn't tell much difference between, let's say, Minds and Odyssey, or like Minds and I guess Odyssey is probably the closest one it looks like. So but I guess the technology is that it's not sitting on a server. Is that just true? And I'm like, wow, that's pretty neat. So I don't know nothing about it either. Then I just heard about it, and I thought that's just neat because it tells us that there is another alternative to whatever's next, from Facebook, I should say, or whatever's next from a giant industry, corporation or individual who runs a corporation, pretty much, taking a big chunk out of the world's communication, whatever we call that system or resource. So anyway, I just think that's neat. And then if you have an internet that's really just a bunch of tubes connected, technically it's a bunch of wires connected to each other, you step away from Facebook. There's really no difference than when everybody stepped away from AOL. I just happened to be aware of that because I worked at AOL back in the day. And at the time, everyone was most of the world was figuring out what the internet was. People in this country watched the commercial and went to AOL. So it's like just like now, everybody thinks you Google everything, because they think, if you ask most people, what's a browser? Google is the browser. They don't even know Microsoft makes a browser. So it was just everyone used AOL. So, there's that potential that everyone will just step off of Facebook. And it could be as fast as everybody gets sick of it. Once it's a sinking ship, you're definitely jumping off of it. But it could just be as simple as the Kardashians start using Minds tomorrow because it's pink. And then, boom, nobody's on Facebook anymore.
Yeah. And it's been crazy too, because I'm looking at ThreeSpeak right now because you brought that up, and I looked at Minds earlier, and I've just had so many user problems using Minds that I haven't. But
and I don't want to advocate. I just heard that it was an example of the concept. I don't even know if it is, but it's just, I'm using that as an example. But you're saying the one is called ThreeMind, or what is it?
Or ThreeSpeak, and that one that one I allowed a viewer of mine to upload, like we're basically going to test like 5 videos of mine or whatever, and I think he's uploaded 3. But like when people watch them and interact with them by giving likes or whatever, it actually gives them cryptocurrency value. So I guess there supposedly is like a way that you can cash that out or something. So it's actually a way to monetize your content out of crypto, and people are generating it they generate the crypto by, I guess, processing that data. So it's been kind of an interesting process seeing that. But like I have one video there it's like 36 likes, and I think it's worth like $4.50 or something. I don't know. But like I'm looking at, or it's like that's like $2.45, and it's been like 36 times. And it's like, well, if you look at that compared to YouTube for, cost per mil for advertising with like SPAR channels and stuff, like what they would get, like, yeah, you can actually, see that like this also allows the individual person to get more income from what they're doing, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So again, that could be the kind of thing that just flips. Everybody goes to the other side of the island and it just flips over. So I don't know exactly if I'm describing it right, but just by looking at it and from what you're describing, the thing about YouTube is that they have to pull, I don't even remember, the numbers must be insane at this point, how many video hours, onto their servers, and they just have to live on crazy hard drives. I mean, holy moly, can you imagine how much stuff is on YouTube? I have 5,000 videos up there, right? So they got a ton of video, and they got to pay to have all that computers plugged in case somebody might want to watch one of these videos, because we'd complain if it took a moment to watch it, right? So how do you compete with that? Like, it's just not possible. It's why they're sucking in all that money or whatever and trying to develop technology to be able to make it possible. So this looks like some sort of a share, like whatever the, what was that called back in the day with, where they would put all the music on there and everybody would share it. The distributed concept where the videos go up and then get distributed into pieces, like the film strip gets uploaded and chopped into images, and then everybody just takes an image, and when somebody wants to watch the video, they get pulled back together and created into a video, and somebody streams it.
Like basically, yeah.
So it's basically distributed. So instead of having one big data center that they have to pay the electric bill on, a bunch of people agree to work with this system where your computer is both hosting and watching stuff, and depending on how much you're watching or how much you're hosting, you get paid or you owe, right? I guess, or maybe you get paid in one way or both ways, and then they have advertising or something. But anyway, it's really neat. So if they can use that concept to create a way that they don't have a massive infrastructure, that people are supporting, the viewers are supporting the infrastructure, and then they also have a way to incentivize people to be able to earn any kind of a incentive to do it, either a living or extra money or whatever it turns out for them, then yeah, that could turn YouTube off in a second, especially if you remove we want to call like the advertising issue with YouTube where it's not suitable for somebody. So even if, hey, I just want to do this. Well, no, you can't, because we're worried about ads. Well, if it's on a system that doesn't worry about ads and you can post stuff that YouTube doesn't even like, plus you get paid. And if it's paid anywhere near what YouTube's offering, let alone better, like I say, YouTube is efficient, but it ain't perfect at all. And it's proven itself to fail every once in a while and do dumb things. And all it would take is the right thing coming along at the time when YouTube pissed off just enough people. And then you start that landslide. And if that new system could, there will be a new system, and whatever that new system is, when that new system is capable at the right time that YouTube hesitates, what I'm saying, the mass will happen, the mass migration will happen. I'm wondering though, at this point, we're speculating it in the middle of a night on a live chat. That these people are not unaware, and they're not without resource. There's probably like whole departments theorizing different ways that it could fall apart or what could happen, and they're either preventing it or just leaning into it, right? And like just owning the next, so that, okay, it's going to fail this way. Let's make sure we own every single way it could fail or something.
Yeah. And that's something that's beyond me as far as like those talks and everything. Although I will say I'm I don't want to be so rude as to doze off, and I'm feeling myself about to get there, although I haven't slept on you, and I don't intend to sleep on you yet, my guy, but I think this might be where I call it for myself.
Yeah, we've been chatting for a while. We're definitely at the 4 hour mark. And, we've been chatting for a while. So thanks for jumping in. Appreciate it. We got a lot of chat.
Yeah, anytime, man. Take it easy.
All right. Well, with that, I have one. Everybody else is not 2A enough to hang this long. So I win. Do I get some sort of thing over here?
Tonight's episode, photo finish.
And it was not so much a photo finish as I just bangled one. So most 2A. There you go. Let's see. So yeah, that was pretty fun. So there was a couple of things there that I don't know if anybody probably didn't get out of that. I've been bugging Walt a couple of times in his side chats as he's doing other things, and often when he's distracting him while he's trying to do other things, just being ornery or whatever. So we got a chance to more efficiently elaborate on some of that, I think, which was good, and then talk about some other stuff, which hopefully was interesting for some people. I've still got a couple of questions, if he's still listening, on the whole philosophy and the idea of levels of similarity. I think that's the way you say it. Anyway, some stuff from physics that I'm wondering will apply to psychology, to philosophy. So anyway, we'll talk about that in some future chat, perhaps. Let's see. The FBI in color. What does that mean? Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe you're listening to something from them before. Let's see. So we had quite a few things. I think there was some other people in here earlier as well. Did Bob even jump in for a minute? He didn't stick around very long. Looking in the private chat if anybody said anything. No. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up. So thanks everybody for joining. And we'll be back on Friday, next Friday, to wrap up the week in 2A.